Okay, we're recording.
Okay. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this afternoon. I thank you for the rain that we had today. It was really refreshing, Lord, and I thank you for that good clean air also. I thank you for helping me get done with the notes and for helping me put everything together on time, and I thank you for having everyone come together tonight to be able to study this final meeting on the presentations of equality as it concerns the Constitution. Lord, we learned a lot throughout these presentations, and we thank you for how you've helped us to see and understand different aspects of your truths, and we ask that you continue to help us to understand the final points on it tonight. Help us to take the most important aspects with it out and be able to remember them going forward and apply them wherever need be. Continue to help us be able to use your methodology and your parables and help our minds to continually grasp these concepts more and more. We thank you, Lord, for how you've shown us everything ahead of time and how you've been taking care of us. And we pray all these things in the Lord Jesus Christ's name. Amen. Okay. Let me get some water. Okay. Okay. Let's see here. So, hold on. So, what I want to do in this presentation is wrap up everything we have done, restate it and review it all and bind it off so we can sort of have some revolution on some thoughts. Before we do that, my sister asked me if I could explain the Electoral College because Sister Tess was talking about it in the last presentation. I'll talk about that for a couple minutes really quick. The electoral system in the United States is broken up into two votes, like Tess was saying. You have the state votes and you have the Electoral College. The way the states works is exactly the way it works everywhere else. Everyone goes into the voting booth and they all vote. The state either goes red or blue. You're either voting for the Democrats or the Republicans or even independents, it's fine. Whatever it may be. However, the majority of the people in that state vote is the way that that state goes. Meaning red or blue, whatever it is. The independent never usually gets the majority of anything, so it either goes red or blue with the big main candidates that are available. So what happens now is that the people here in the state are not actually voting for the president of their candidate. They are not actually voting for the candidate. What they're voting for is their electoral votes and what they're going to go to. So if we talk about Trump and Hillary in 2016 election, they're voting to see whether their electoral votes are going to go to one of these people. There are different rules depending on the state about how the electoral votes are broken up exactly. The Constitution gives you one thing about the number of votes. We actually have read part of this the other day. It was next to a clause that we were reading. We didn't actually read it. So each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislator that have made direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress. But no senator, representative, or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. So these electors are, I'm not sure how they choose them, but they're usually like more average people. They're not any kind of city officials. So I'm not sure how they actually choose those electors, but there's that. So then we have a question, how many representatives does every state have in the Senate? So every state has equal representation in the Senate. So you have two groups, okay? You have Congress and you have the Senate. The Senate, everyone, let me just read that part. Representative, everyone is equal. So, but when you come to the House, it's a different story. So it's actually based upon population at that point. Based on the amount of population you have, you get more votes or less. It's the combination total of the two. This means everyone is always going to have representation because you're going to have at least 2 senators. So every state has 2 senators and some amount of population. So the rest of the representatives, it's not the senators that are voting. It's just that you always get at least 2 electors just to represent that, and then extra based on whatever population you have. So everyone is going to have some amount of representation in the Electoral College. That's how you determine the number. What happens is everyone votes and will either vote for the electoral votes to go to Trump or Clinton. Then the delegates are going to come together and they're going to go have another vote. But there is one more problem. The problem is, depending on the state rules, these electoral delegates can be broken up differently. So what that means is some states have a winner-take-all policy. Let's say in Texas they vote for Trump. This means all the delegates will go to Trump if it was winner-take-all. They can also do it by portion and say that the majority went for Trump, so he is going to get this amount of delegates, but Clinton won this amount of vote, so we're going to give her her equal portion of delegates as well. This is splitting the delegates with the one who gets the majority of the vote getting the majority of the delegates. And this seems really kind of cattywampus to me, because if you're, I don't know, it's just these days the system doesn't really make very much sense. But anyway, so each state has different rules about it, and they can change a winner take all or proportionate kind of vote. Then you come to the Electoral College, and the day where they are going to go vote, they all come together and say that based on what their state said, that state said they have to vote for Hillary, or my state said I have to vote for Trump. You're basically voting for someone to vote. So we vote to have other people vote for us. It's a really weird situation. These delegates aren't necessarily bound to vote the way their state says they have to vote either, which that right there is an issue, because that means your vote means nothing. So they would, I don't know, that's crazy to me, because you either get rid of Electoral College or you make a law so that they have to vote the way the state votes. Otherwise, literally, your vote means nothing.
Question though.
Yeah.
I always thought, okay, because they really want to get rid of the Electoral College. So I've really thought about it a lot. But I thought it was to keep the balance, basically, so that the majority we won't have a populist majority vote take over, where the electoral could balance out the majority so that the minority gets a chance. Is that wrong?
Yeah, that was way, way back in the day, though, where there was a very small portion of the population of the United States in rural America. These days, each state has their own I don't know, progressive people. It's not as well demarcated in ideology as it used to be. You can have Democratic people with their Democratic beliefs living in the boonies, and some conservatives living in big cities. It's not quite the way it used to be.
Okay.
It's not as specifically distributed as it used to be.
Yeah, I thought it was to keep it more fair, right?
Yeah, it was like that, because back when the city started to get built up in the United States, you had an insane amount of people in those cities. Because it was so hard to live off the land in the countryside, no one wanted to do that. So it was a very, very, very small amount of people out there in rural America, from my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And their votes would have counted for nothing. He's going to talk about it in a second here.
Okay.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez about Electoral College. Due to severe racial disparity in certain states, the Electoral College effectively weighs white voters over voters of color, as opposed to a one-person, one-vote system where all votes are counted equally, she says, before pushing back against the argument that eliminating the Electoral College would give big states too much power. Yeah, exactly. And the other issue is, because of the Electoral College and what they did, I have yet to look into this issue, but something's going on with requiring IDs for voting in certain areas that's keeping minorities from being able to vote. And there's a lot of problems going on with that too. I've been trying to, I don't know, I need to find some resources to look at what exactly is this ID thing that they're requiring, because it doesn't make any sense. Like, why? I don't know. It's just, it's crazy. But it's in the, if you look at everything that's going on, it is not, it's so unfair to minorities and people in like disadvantaged areas. The things that, oh, it's really bothersome and irritating to see what they're doing. It's frustrating. And it's frustrating to see that people don't see how it's wrong. That's really sad. So this means all the delegates will go to Trump if it's a winner takes all. They can also go by, I already read that, didn't I? I was over here somewhere. So then you come to the Electoral College and the date, yeah. These delegates aren't necessarily bound to vote the way their state says they have to vote. The state says we voted for Trump. Let's say it's winner takes all, and let's say it's Texas with about 36 delegates. Let's say half of them can say, you know what, I disagree. You know what, I disagree. I don't agree with what my state wanted me to do, and I'm going to vote for Hillary. So half of them vote against what their state says. Now, there are different laws about that. In certain states, they're bound, and in certain states, they're not bound to vote in a certain way. This is a really interesting concept. Again, I'm not sure that it's ever happened. Anyway, so he said he's not sure if it's ever happened. Someone in the audience said it did. So I went into the Googles to find this. So here are the instances where the United States in their elections had faithless electors, is what they're called. They're not common, and when they do happen, they don't happen in large numbers. There's just a small amount of them that do this, and we had some of this in 2016. So here's the different cases. It's in your notes if you guys want to look through them. In this one is interesting. Mike Patton, a Republican from Washington State, cast his vote for Ronald Reagan, who had lost in the Republican primary over Gerald Ford, having decided that Ford was not definitively clear in his opposition to abortion. So this guy decided to vote for Ronald Reagan because Gerald Ford wasn't as far against abortion as he would have wanted. So Edwards notes in his book that 1976 election between Ford and Jimmy Carter was exceptionally close, and had Ford garnered slightly more support, Patton's faithless vote would have essentially resulted in a tie, throwing the election to the House of Representatives. 1988 Democratic elector Margaret Leach, a nurse and former member of the Western Virginia legislature, voted for vice presidential nominee Lloyd Benson as president, and presidential nominee Michael Dukakis as vice president. I wanted to make a statement about the Electoral College, Leach told the New York Times. We've outgrown it, and I wanted to point out what I perceive as a weakness in the system. That 270 people can get together in this country and elect a president where he's on the ballot or not. Let's see, year 2000, Barbara Litt-Simmons, a Democratic elector from District of Columbia, left her ballot blank to protest what she called the district's colonial status, or its lack of congressional representation. Litt-Simmons later said she would have voted for Democratic nominee Al Gore if she thought he had a chance of winning. The presidential election that year between incumbent Vice President Gore and Texas Governor George W. Bush was the closest in U.S. history, with 573 votes separating the two candidates. In the deciding state of Florida, the narrow margin required a recount and ultimately necessitated a Supreme Court decision. In the end, Bush received 271 electoral votes and Gore 266. So it was really close. 2004, one Minnesota elector voted for vice president candidate John Edwards instead of presidential candidate John F. Kennedy. That elector also voted for Edwards. This is 2016, sorry. So Christopher Supran, a paramedic and former firefighter who was on the first responders on September 11th, wrote in the New York Times in an op-ed, in the run-up to the Electoral College vote, that Trump is someone who shows daily he is not qualified for the office. Supran said he had a legal right and constitutional duty to vote his conscience and planned to do so. On Monday, he cast his vote for Ohio Governor John Kasich. Another Republican elector from Texas, William Green, cast his vote for former Texas Rep. Ron Paul, according to the Austin American Statesman. A third Texan, Art Cisneros, had also opposed Trump and resigned from the Electoral College ahead of the vote. He was replaced by an alternate. In Washington, where voting for a person non-nominated by the party carries a $1,000 fine for electors defected from Clinton, who won the state's popular vote. So there was defecting on both sides here. Esther John, who voted for former Secretary of State Colin Powell, told local media she did so in the hopes that Democrats and Republicans could reconcile. Peter B. Chaffalo, a co-founder of the group Hamilton Electors, which seeks to change the electoral process, also voted for Powell. So did Levi Guerra, who together with Powell had previously attempted to challenge Washington's faithless elector law in court. Sounds like they were trying to instigate a court suit or something. Robert Satacum, an environmental activist, voted for Faith Spotted Eagle, a Yankton Sioux elder who has protested against the Keystone XL and Dakota Access Pipeline. In Hawaii, where Clinton won 62% of the vote, elector David Mullenix voted for Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders because he thought Sanders was the most qualified candidate. So there's a lot of back and forth, and faithless electors aren't a new one. I am really, really interested to see what's going to happen in the 2020 election. I think that's going to be a word that has been used ever since Trump stepped on the scene, and that's the word unprecedented. And I remember the day I realized they're using this word like I've never heard them use this word before. The moment Trump stepped his little tippy toes out, all you heard everywhere you went was, this is unprecedented, this is unprecedented, and this is unprecedented. And what unprecedented means is this has never happened before. No precedent like this has ever been set before. This is all brand new. Of course it's not, and we've seen that, but everyone is shocked by this. So anyways, that's how that part of the system works. You vote, and then the delegates go to the Electoral College, and they actually vote for who the president is. You might ask, why is this system in place? That's the obvious question, because that is a really weird system we have going on. The idea was that you wanted to be able to have equal representation in the United States, or equal voting power in the United States. The way they're going to do this is through the Electoral College. Let me explain that more. If you think about the history in which the Electoral College is made, you're looking at 1787 with the Constitutional Convention, and then 1789 when it is actually going to get ratified. In that time, though, there were some big cities, big industrial areas, and then there was the rural country. In an effort to equalize the vote of the rural places and the vote of the cities, they gave the rural areas more voting power through this electoral system. Because what ends up happening is it ends up equalizing to some extent. I know there are some problems with it, and we won't go over all of them, but some of the powers are that it gives them disproportionate power. So you can have a small state with 3 to 4 times voting power compared to someone like California, which has millions of people in it, compared to the small little state. So at the time, the way they were dealing with it was to make sure that it wasn't disproportionately voting, because what they saw was that you can have places like New York, LA, San Diego, San Francisco, Chicago, some of these major cities in the US, if they all voted one way, it wouldn't even matter if you were in Wyoming and you showed up to the poll that day. It just doesn't matter. Your vote doesn't really count because those major cities voted and there's millions of people in them, and they're all to some extent homogenous, and they all voted the same way. This was a way to equalize that problem. There are debates going on right now as to whether or not the Electoral College is fit for purpose anymore. That's a whole other argument. That's generally how it works. And another interesting thing about this time was that the rural areas that they're talking about, those states were mostly the southern states, from my recollection, because the North was industrializing. They didn't have, they didn't, if you guys remember our little history lesson, the South had huge, big family farms. The North, however, the North and the Northwest, as that federal territory kept opening up, the government was trying to sell it to people, a few acres here and there, to establish tiny, small family farms. So it wasn't like one big plantation. They were trying to get it overtaken with these little tiny farms everywhere, just so that you can't have the South going in those areas, taking those areas up. If you guys remember that headbutting issue that they had. So, but those areas and then the cities surrounding them, they had this, because they weren't having these huge farms that their economies revolved around, because everyone was living off the land. They had these huge industrialized cities with factories, and like in California, you had the whole gold rush situation and the railroad and all this stuff. So they become really, what was the word that just escaped me? Industrialized. But then the South, you have these big rural plantations and stuff. So the mindsets of both are different, but because of the nature of how a city works, everyone flocks to the cities, and you have like thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of people living in cities. So now you had the voting skewed to their side. So if I'm correct, this was put in place to kind of help the southern states have some kind of say in the government, because that was, again, in the constitutional convention that they were having. But I have to look back into that, but I'm pretty sure that's kind of what was going on. Anyways, so like I said, I want to try to recap what we've been doing and just sort of bind it off where we are right now. How did we begin? What was our first premise that we laid out? Our first premise was that the Constitution is good. And how did we do that? We started in the year 1798. In 1798, what verse is being fulfilled in Revelation 13:11? You have the beast that is coming up out of the earth. Sister White comments that the word coming up means spring up like a plant. What we saw was that you can pull the agricultural system out of this verse, since it's implicit with that in this verse. And it is bringing you to somewhere in that agricultural cycle, which we know to be where that plant is springing up. For our line, it'd be 9/11. So it is bringing you to that waymark. That time after you have a plowed field, but before you have a plant that's growing, or in the process of growth taking place. So you're right there at that middle point. From this point, we said that if you have this history here at 9/11 where the seed is growing up, what must you have before it? You have to have a time where the field is being plowed. Is this the one? Yes, okay. Let me move this out of the way. No. Okay, so that's what we're talking about right here. This is where Sister White says that the seed is springing up right here, and so we've matched it to 9/11 on our time, because this is where we know that we have our seed springing up based off the agricultural model. And so Sister White inserted the agricultural model in Revelation 13:11. So this is the first waymark that we were then able to line up. And so we know that if we have this as being a 9/11, we know that prior to 9/11, here we have a time of plowing. So we knew that this whole time period here, we knew that back here we had to have a plowing time. And so then we went back to to look at how the plowing was getting worked and what was happening. Because it's also with a message that this plowing happens, right? It doesn't just happen out of thin air. There's a message that overturns the earth and starts poking at things, at weeds and things. So let's go back to reading that. Or was I 9/11? So it is bringing you to that waymark, the time after you have a plowed field, but before you have a plowed growth. You're right there at that middle point. From this point, we said that if you have this history here at 9/11, where the seed is growing, what must you have before it? You have to have a time where the field is being plowed. So we said we had this plowed field, but what did we say was the problem with the field before it was plowed? It's full of weeds. It's full of problems. So we said there must have been a time beforehand with all these weeds and all these problems in it, and somehow the United States is going to go through this process from a fallow field to a plowed field. The first thing that we have to identify is what is the problem that the U.S. is solving. What did we say? How it's going to govern? What did Sister White say? What are the two problems that she raises? She says there is royal oppression and priestly intolerance. She says that's the history that is taking place here during the 1260 years. It is the darkness that they are steeped in. So in order for that to be rectified, what has to come? What does the United States need to solve? It needs to solve the problem of priestly intolerance and royal oppression. So what does it need to be able to solve that? It needs knowledge. It needs a message. So what message is going to arrive? We said the Declaration of Independence is the message. It's a message of freedom in 1776. So right here you have the Declaration of Independence come. You have a message come down. And this is the work that's going to help it plow. This is the knowledge that's going to increase. And then here you have the Constitutional Convention. So in 1776, you have the Declaration of Independence, and the Declaration is going to say it's time for a change of things. What did A.T. Jones call the American Revolution? No, how about this? What does the Great Seal of the United States say on it? It says a new order of things. The American Revolution in this time, where a new order of things is going to take place, the new order of things is the idea of changing what we have done in the past. So what Sister White identifies as priestly intolerance and royal oppression, a civil problem and a religious problem. So what we need now is religious freedom and civil freedom. The way she's going to describe this in a nice phrase and in a nice way that the chart describes it is republicanism and Protestantism. It needs those two things to solve the problem of the past. So we identified republicanism as the idea of the rights of the individual. It is the rights of the individual over the state. So you have the rights of the individual over the state. What is Protestantism? Back to the Reformation. Someone's answering, and Tyler has questions on it. It's not quite the answer he was looking for. When Sister White and the pioneers are talking about Protestantism, what are they talking about? They're talking about the German princes who protested Rome. What was Rome doing to the princes? Rome was forcing the princes to do whatever Rome wanted. So these civil princes came together and say, no, they're not going to do it anymore. They're not going to take Rome bossing them around and telling them how to run their countries. So what they're going to do is they're going to go protest Rome, and they're going to go say enough is enough. They come together and sort of rebel at that point. This is how Protestantism is born. Protestantism is this constant idea, isn't the idea of religious Protestantism, but the idea of protesting Rome. Oh, okay. So Protestantism isn't the idea of religious Protestantism, but the idea of protesting Rome and protesting church and state. So it's not like a religious idea. It's just an idea of protesting those two combinations, which can come from any point, anyone in the country. You don't have to be religious to protest this. Who was that group? We'll get into it later, because there's a group that's literally like a coalition of human beings. They're not religious, from what I can tell. There's no like clear religion of them, but they're this Americans United. I think that's what it's called. And they solely exist to protest the combination of church and state. And so I was looking at Project Blitz, and this is something that Americans United was looking at, because they were looking at this like crazy Protestant people who are trying to take down the United States. We'll look at it in a minute, but you don't have to be religious to protest church and state. So anyways, republicanism represents the individual over the state, and Protestantism represents church and state being separate. We identified that the principles of republicanism and Protestantism find root in the Declaration of Independence. This is when they're first given voice to. So who are the founders who wrote the Declaration of Independence writing it to? They're writing it to Great Britain, because Great Britain is impeding their freedom at this point, and so they give Great Britain a list of grievances. The founders say that they have rights that Great Britain can't take away. Not only can they not take away these rights, but they couldn't even give these rights to them if they wanted to. And Great Britain is trampling all over those rights. they lay out this argument that they're justified now to break away from Great Britain and start their own government and do their own thing because Great Britain has not been respecting them as a people. Great Britain wanted to tax them and dictate to them without representation. One of the key places where we saw this illustrated was 10 years before in 1766 with the Declaratory Act. So what did the act say? That the U.S. was subject to Britain. At this time, what was happening in the United States was coming up with their own laws. They had something called the Continental Congress, and they were coming up there with their own laws, and Britain was saying that they're not allowed to do that. They said the U.S. is under their subjugation and under Parliament. Parliament is going to tell them what to do, and they can't, and what they can and what they can't do. And they're not only saying that they have to do what Parliament says, but also that they have no voice in Parliament to even like help make a decision that has to do with them. So if I tell you what to do without your saying it, what is that? It's a dictatorship, it's tyranny. So they see this tyranny here and they're horrified by it. There's going to be this space of time, and they come to this breaking point where the United States says enough is enough. They make their list of grievances with the Declaration of Independence. So this reminds me a lot of what the princes did do in the Reformation at the Diet of Spires, when they went up against the leader and said, yeah, we're done, we're not doing this anymore. So they kind of did the same thing here, but on a way, way bigger scale. Then we said the idea of the Declaration of Independence are just ideas. They are not formalized yet. They're going to increase, and they're going to try to do the Articles of Confederation, but that doesn't really work. So they're wrestling with it and how to make it work. Then they come to 1789, where they're going to found the Constitution, or 1787, where they start the Constitutional Convention, and they make the Constitution and start it in this year. So the Constitution is then formalized message of the Declaration of Independence. So we have in our movement right now something happening as well. And I was listening to one of Parminder's videos today, and it was explaining this really well in our time. We had this methodology come up where all of a sudden we saw these patterns in the Bible, and we saw that they had application in our day, and we started to use them all willy-nilly, and they were really good principles and ideas, and we saw the worth in them. But it wasn't, we now see that some things weren't working right because we weren't making the right application, because they weren't organized principles yet. We saw that there was use in them and hope for them, but we couldn't apply them properly because we didn't have them organized, right? So now Parminder and other people, leaders in this movement, are trying to organize these principles in a way that everyone can learn them like in a textbook and use them. And we're basically kind of like in the process of a constitutional convention, but like a methodological convention, if you can say that. But it's really hard to use the principles until you have them formalized and organized in a way where it's clear what you do and what you don't do. When you don't have it clear, it's easy to make mistakes. So that's the same thing we have happening in our movement now. I just thought I'd say that because it's really interesting how and what Parminder is trying to do, which is formalize our message, is extremely important for us to be able to use this methodology going forward and to be able to use it correctly to make good application without making mistakes. So that's what's happening right now, and it hurts everyone's brain. And just like everyone in the Constitutional Convention had headaches, it hurts your brain really a lot to do that. But we have to do it so we don't make mistakes in the future, because from here on in the future, it's not just about this internal group anymore. We're going to have people on the outside responsible on us that we need to give a message to. So, let's see here. From this point, go further. Did I read that? No, okay. So they're wrestling with how to make this work. Okay, they come to 1789 where they're going to found the Constitution. The Constitution is the formalized message of the Declaration of Independence. Same principles, and now it's going to just establish the nation. From this point, it's going to go further. Then the United States is here established in 1798. So here, okay, hold on. I don't know where to find one of these lines, but this is going to drive me crazy if I don't say this. In every single one of our little dispensations from, can I use this one? I'll just use this one. So we know there's two waymarks here. There's increase of knowledge and then there's formalization. And the same in this, it's not to scale or anything, but you have an increase of knowledge somewhere in here and you have a formalization. And then you have an increase of knowledge and you have a formalization. In this dispensation, it was the time of the End magazine. And this dispensation, it was the knowledge on time and the 2520 and the time. And unless you formalize it and get it fixed here, you cannot go into the next dispensation and use this information. It has to be organized here. So we're in this dispensation here, and we can't move forward until we have our message organized. But like with the Constitution, when it is formalized and when it is put into practice, what it helps do is help give birth to a movement. Okay? So like here, when it was formalized, then you had a test on it, you had a shaking, and you had a splitting of two groups. And then the one who maintained what you had just formalized moves forward. Now you go into this dispensation, and once the message is formalized, you have a shaking and you have a testing and a splitting of two groups, and the people who maintain that formalized message move forward, and they become a movement. They have more and more like unique characteristics as a movement because they're becoming more and more separate. So now we're here, we have this message, it's being formalized and organized, we're being tested, and there's the splitting happening, and whoever is going to maintain that formalized message that started in 2018 called the Midnight Cry, that we know that it is, whoever's going to stick it out, help formalize it, get it, put together and understand it and keep the principles of that, those are the people who are going to move forward. Whoever rejects that message that's being formalized here is going to fall back behind, and they're all uniting from, what we see. But those are the people that are going to move forward in this history. And once they have that formalized message and they move forward, they now become even more unique as a group, or as a movement, because it like births a movement. So it just keeps piling on top of each other with characteristics. He he was just saying the Constitution part. I'm just trying to apply it to what we have, but he had this, and then he goes into Judas after it, and every time he does that, I'm like, man, if you would have known at this time what's about to happen with you with all that situation. It's just been really weird to hear him talk about the whole splitting with Judas, and then, knowing what happened later on. It's really weird. Anyways, yeah, he did a really good job with this. So same principles, and now it's going to just establish the nation. From this point, it's going to go further. Then the U.S. is here established in 1798. So we saw that we can take this line all the way to the Sunday Law. Is the Sunday Law technically the end of the United States? The Constitution is the end of the Constitution. What does the Constitution represent? It's the end of the Republic. So from 1798 to Sunday Law is the history of the American Republic, okay? And this whole history, this whole thing is the history of the American Republic, this whole time period.
Question.
Yep.
Is the Sunday Law you're pointing to there the one that we're not sure if is going to come, or is
the 144,000 line Sunday Law?
Okay, so it's still coming, right?
I'm going to go into the Sunday Law that happened in 2014 and what that looks like, and then we're going to look at what that's probably going to mean for the one in the future, because Tyler talks about it too. It's been happening, and it's going to be perfected at that Sunday Law. It's just not going to look like what we thought, because we have these really strange, like, we don't know how to take what's written in books like Revelation and Daniel and make a practical application of it that actually makes sense in our time. We have these like aggrandized ideas of what it's going to look like with all this magical, I don't even know what, in our heads. Something really crazy. And it's actually been practically happening around us for a really long time, and we just haven't been realizing it. And so, because we're we read Ellen White wrong for so long that it helped us get this really fanciful ideas in our heads, and we haven't been seeing the practical application. That's one. Two, the other issue is we've been making the wrong applications of some of her statements, which make our time look like not what they're looking like, and so we're thinking that something should look different than what it does.
I sort of get that. I'm sort of understanding that. Not completely, but sort of. But when you have it on this line, I just kind of guess I needed a little clarification. That's not like the 1888 Sunday law that Jones was fighting. That's the one that's coming that we need more clarification on, right?
Yeah, I should have put this on there. Let me just do this.
I just don't know how to say what I'm glad you understand what I'm saying, and I
do. I know, because we have a ton of Sunday laws now.
Yeah, so it's kind of like maybe we need to label it different, kind of, huh?
That's what I'm about to do. Just give me a second here.
Hey, can I also say something too? I was thinking what Susan was just saying, and it's kind of interesting because this thought came through my mind a while back. If it's not the Sunday law that we sort of expected through reading Spirit of Prophecy wrong all these years and being brainwashed by the Adventist Church that there's an actual physical Sunday law down the road. You know, when the first day keepers, that they're going to see what's going on with our protesting and whatever that causes them to wake up, they're already Sunday keepers anyways. So why would a Sunday law, I don't know, like want them to choose the Sabbath or something? It kind of doesn't make any sense now that we're learning this new thing of church and state coming together. Does that kind of make sense?
Kind of, but I could still see how it would be a test for them when the people are telling them about the true Sabbath of the Bible. They would have a test there because they never have heard that. And so if they do, it would be something different than what they knew, and they would be like, what are they talking about? So I could still see how
it's going to be something like that then?
No, because that's not the issue right now. Is more subtle, and we're going to look at it in a little bit.
Okay.
And it has to do with this whole equality issue. But for Susan's understanding here, this Sunday law is the one where the sixth kingdom of Revelation 17 goes into the seventh kingdom, or Revelation 17. I said Revelation 17. So you have, the seven heads, and there's an eighth in there. But this is the seventh kingdom. Do you understand?
So that's when Trump is a full-blown dictator, that Sunday law.
Yeah, he's incrementally. Remember.
So wouldn't that be Raffia then? Isn't that Raffia?
No.
That's Panium?
No, that's Sunday law is after Panium.
Okay. Yeah, I still am confused a little bit, but anyway.
These lines aren't the regular lines that we're looking at. That's why it's probably a little bit confusing.
Hold on. I can kind of wiggle this over, and I could make it work. There we go.
Because I thought we're done with the sixth kingdom when Trump morphs into a dictator.
That's the thing that confuses people.
Yeah.
We say in 2019 he becomes a dictator, but he doesn't become as full-blown of a dictator as he does at Sunday law. Okay? So what we're saying is each step along the way, you have him getting less and less restrained.
Okay.
And here is going to be the complete non-restraining of Donald Trump.
Okay.
So I'll just stick that over here. Okay, that works. But this is basically, this match is not too bad, actually. But look at our line. This is our line down here, okay? So you have 9/11, Raffia, Panium, and you have the big Sunday law.
You're missing.
And this is just 1798 is way, way in the back. But the whole time period from 1798 to the Sunday law, the issue is that the Constitution is hanging on. It's hanging on by a thread in our time, but it's still hanging on. What is going to happen at Sunday law is maybe there's still going to be a constitution, but no one is going to have any regard for the principles that are in there, especially those two main principles, which are Protestantism and Republicanism. So self-governance, the right of the people, the right of the states, religious freedom, all these things, no one's going to care about those anymore. So you're going to have church and state combination. And it really clicked for me. If I can just go back and keep reading, there's something he talks about here that clicked things for me for 2014 like nobody's business. And if you like, it really was like 2014 really was a Sunday law, 100%. That is like so clear right now. I just want to get there if it's okay. I think it'll answer more questions as we go. No, Jonathan, I don't have it because that wasn't something he had put on the line. So I only have the lines that he was talking about. So 2014 isn't on there. But we're going to talk about it in a minute. I wiggled that one in, just he wasn't talking about it, but you'll see. Well, I'm just going to read and you'll see. Where's the, okay. So where was I? Tyranny. Okay, so they see this tyranny here and they're horrified by it. There's going to be this space of time and they come to this breaking point where the United States says enough is enough. They make their list of grievances with the Declaration of Independence. Then we said that the idea of the Declaration of Independence are just ideas. They haven't been formalized yet, so we talked about that. They're going to increase in 1798. Where was I? First Republican. Oh, okay. So from 1798 to Sunday law is the history of the American Republic. So it's still a republic. And remember, in our line in 2014 or 15, whichever one, she said the Republican horn is started to be broken. It's not going to be completely broken until the big Sunday law after Panium. And that's when the American Republic ends, at that big Sunday law. But this history from 1798, when the seed springs up, all the way to after Panium, where the Sunday law is, that's whole history is the history of the Republic of the United States. But it's going to end soon. So it's interesting that the Protestant horn broke in 1844, but the Supreme Court decisions after that, when it came to civil rights and Roe versus Wade and women's rights and all of this, ended up voting on the right side of the issue. So I don't know, that thought just ran through my brain. But anyways, what starts at the Sunday law? First, what is the republic? So it's the right of the individual over the state. So what comes at Sunday law? A dictatorship. It's the American empire. So what does an empire have? It has an emperor. This is going to take you to the close of probation. This is the history of the United States as the sixth kingdom of Bible prophecy up until Sunday law. And after is the history of the United States as the seventh kingdom of Bible prophecy. So they're still going to have the right to vote. The problem is that somehow through events that are going to take place, they are no longer going to be protecting individual rights. And we see that the Constitution guarantees what things? It guarantees freedom of religion, civil freedom, sovereignty of the people, and rights of the people. So rights of the people, sovereignty of the people is the right of the people to govern themselves, to self-governance. So these are the things are what going to go away when you come to the Sunday law. All of these things. So now they're already going away presently. It is a progressive fall. There are the things that are fully and completely destroyed by the time you get to the Sunday law. This is what makes the United States a republic. So when you these things are what make it a republic right over here. When you remove those things, where in what history do you end up? You end up in Rome, but when is Rome? You end up in Rome in the 1260. So you end up back in the 1260 years of papal persecution. What is the beast of the United States going to do at the Sunday law? It's going to persecute, but what is it going to do according to Revelation 13? This is where you need to pay attention when it comes to 2014 as a Sunday law. So it's going to speak like the dragon. It is going to force the people to make an image to the beast at this point. It itself is also going to make an image to the beast. So it's going to make the whole world make an image to the beast. And it's going to have an image to the beast itself. What that is it's bringing the world and the United States to the 1260 years over again. So we know that this is the history of the beast that it's trying to copy. So you have the 1260 years. It's it is the fourth. What? Why did I say fourth? Did I mean fifth? I'm pretty sure I meant fifth. The fifth kingdom. We will call this the beast. So what is the beast? How do we describe the beast in this history? I don't mean in terms of the spiritual language, but what does it actually look like? The church dictates to the state, but who were the players in that history? You had the kings of Europe and the papacy sitting on top of the kings of Europe. So the papacy was dictating to them, saying, this is what you have to do. Just like what we saw with the protest of the princes and the Diet of Spires, they're going to go say that they don't want Rome to dictate to them anymore, and they don't want to be under the yoke of their yoke anymore. So the idea is that the kings of Europe are going to be subjugated to the beast. Then it is going to receive its deadly wound. So then who rises up? It's the U.S. You have the United States, and what is so great about it at this point? What kind of government is it? It's a republic. Then what's going to happen to the republic? It's going to come to an end, and it's now going to be an empire. So what do we say the United States is going to do here? What does it make itself? An image to the beast. This is important. What is the image of the beast? What is an image? It's a replica. Basically, what I'm asking when I say we're going to make a statue or image of Sister Tess, we would make a little replica. So is that replica Tess? No, it's different from Tess, but it looks like it. It's a copy. So an image is a copy. It is a copy of the beast. Where is the beast? No, the beast isn't in the background waiting. The beast is dead. The beast is fully killed in 1798. The papacy is still alive, but the papacy is not the beast. The problem with calling the papacy the beast is that the papacy did not end fully in 1798. They've been around since then. They decreased in power and they didn't have authority like they did, but the papacy has always been around. It never ceased to be the papacy. It always existed as the papacy. And this is where I got kind of confused when it comes to the beast and what we say about the sixth and seventh kingdom. Okay, so here's my question. You have the, let's see, you have the statue. I'm gonna just draw this horrible statue, but you have the statue and you have let's see, just one, two, three, four. Oh no, I don't want this one. I want the 7 heads. So let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this one we know is the papacy, right? And then what did you have? Rome, Greece, Medo-Persia, and Babylon. So and then Greece, Rome, papacy. The 6th is the U.S., and then the 7th, we're going to say the trifold U.S., okay? But all these kingdoms were always bad, isn't it? Weren't they always the beast kingdom? And the 7th kingdom is bad, but we're saying is that the time period of 1798 to the Sunday Law is the period of the 6th kingdom. But in this time period, the United States is being good. So does anyone else see that?
I see that it started out good, but I wouldn't say it's good now.
It started out good. It started to go down, but it's still hanging on because it's not fully down until the Sunday Law. So to me, the 6th kingdom is something completely unique from the other kingdoms. It's not like it was always bad from day one. The papacy, I don't know that there was ever a time where the papacy was good. Do you know what I'm saying?
Rome was a republic, wasn't it?
It was, but it was a pagan, and it was the one that was trampling God's people. So I don't think it was ever considered to be a good kingdom, because these are all the counterfeit kings of the north.
But we're not good because we're a Christian nation. We're good because you guys, I'm saying, you guys are good because you're a republic, not because you're a Christian nation. So paganism shouldn't have anything to do with it. If the U.S. was good because they were a republic, then wouldn't Rome have been good at one point?
I don't think that was the criteria to make something good back in the day, because it was different under those rules. This is keeping the rights of the people as they were supposed to be. This was like, hold on, the glorious land.
Okay.
It's just confusing to me that we have this time period where we're, I don't know, because it seems different. It seems like the sixth kingdom is really, really kind of different from the fifth. And the time that the image of the beast gets fully set up at the seventh kingdom, it's like you skip the sixth kingdom ideologically, kind of. I don't know how to explain what's happening in my head right now. This is not easy. But the beast of Revelation 13, the first one, it's all bad. It never has a single good thing about it. It never has anything nice about it. The second beast isn't the first beast. It's not like the first beast at all. It doesn't do what the first beast does. What it does in the end is it tries to make an image to it. It's not the beast. It doesn't look anything like that beast. It's a completely different beast, but it tries to make itself look like that beast. So I just think it's a really interesting concept to think about how unique this one is compared to all the rest of them. Because the fifth was a conglomerate of all of these, the leopard, the lion, the bear, the whatever. This one is completely different. How it looks like here. The only time it starts to look like these five, because it's trying to make an image to this beast. This beast looks like all these beasts. The only time it succeeds in fully making an image to this one is when it gets to this kingdom. So I was just thinking about that because it was an interesting distinction. I don't know. I'm going to move on before I keep confusing everyone. But here's what it is. The way that church and state combination looked like in Europe, if you look at the actual history of it, we have also kind of a daydreaming idea of that as well. It wasn't that the papacy always got what it wanted from the rulers of the European regions. It wasn't that it had complete control over every single ruler all the time over the entire 1260 years. There were ups and downs with that whole system. But generally, you had this church that had a lot of the people in Europe were a part of the Catholic Church. And so they had a lot of influence over if a ruler wasn't doing what the Catholic Church wanted and the Catholic Church told the people that your ruler is bad. Now you have dissent from all the people in your nation because you're not doing what the Catholic Church wants you to do, which is what the people want you to do. So the ruler is at the mercy of this belief system because everyone believes this belief system. So if your subjects all believe it and you try to do something against their belief system, they're going to revolt. And so you can't. So you have your hands tied behind your back. You're at their mercy. And that's this whole situation, what was happening. So you have an influence through the people by this church system that's happening. And all it's doing, it can't do anything by itself. It just sits there. So all it can do is influence the state to do certain things and make certain civil laws. So the papacy in our time is Protestants. They're 100% Protestants. And in 2014, you saw Protestant America with certain leaders come in after they're sick of Obama and after they had 6 years so far of him doing what he had been doing, taking God out of the schools and wherever you want. And they came together, and it's hard for us to see it because they were so secretive about it. And that's the whole point why the Sunday law is so hard to see for us right now, is because the evangelicals, the Protestants, they were extremely secretive about how they went about doing this because they're trying to come in on the back end. They are a church, so they're a church structure, and they're trying to control the state. Okay? And the biggest thing that we have in this country, what makes us a democracy, for the people, by the people, a republic, whatever you want to call it, is the fact that a people can vote for their ruler, okay? And what they did in this election is they completely undermined that, okay? And it started in 2014. So they went and they got this tool called Cambridge Analytica, and it was all funded by Robert Mercer, which is on the extreme right wing, the Christian right. He has some different ideological understandings of things, but him and Steve Bannon with his Judeo-Christian belief system and everything he keeps spouting around, they got this going, and this was literally the church's like shot. I think we keep seeing it as just Steve Bannon, and we keep separating them from that religious aspect of it, but it was completely from the religious end of it that it came in, and it tried to subvert what this country is made out of. And if you think about it, because I was wondering, why isn't it the Patriot Act and that undermining our rights? It cannot come from the state. You can't have a Sunday law coming from the state. It has to come from the Protestants. The Protestants are the ones that have to make the push to bring in a Sunday law, to bring in a place where church is getting to be in charge of state and affecting state issues. And this is the big thing that happened in 2014. You had the religious right, and you knew it was the religious right because they were against Clinton, and it started off against with the what's his name? It's in here somewhere. The guy before Trump that they were funding. What was his name? I thought it was in here.
Rick Santorum.
What's that?
Is it Rick Santorum?
No.
That who is funding?
Cambridge Analytica was working for another guy before Trump, a Republican nominee.
I think it's Bush Jr.
Was it Bush Jr.?
No. Ted Cruz, it's right here. Sorry, Ted Cruz. This guy. So they started off with him, but the moment that Trump got an edge in and Ted Cruz got an edge out, they immediately switched to funding Trump and backing him completely. So, but this all started in 2014. In 2014, you had the beginnings of church being in charge of state. The church, the Christian right came together, and they had a massive impact on this entire country using this tool called Cambridge Analytica. The actual tool itself isn't that important. It's the people behind it who funded it and what they were trying to do. And what they are trying to do is put church in charge of state. So I want to look at Project Blitz real quick. Where did it go? So I'm going to read this real quick. At the beginning of 2018, when Americans United's legislative staff, so this is Americans United, their whole point is to be to fight the union of church and state. So Americans United for separation of church and state. So these guys, are, relatively to this understanding of things, they're good guys. So Americans United's legislative staff members were tracking new state proposals affecting church-state separation. They noticed an unusual trend. More than 24 bills calling for the display of "In God We Trust" in public schools had been proposed in states across the country. So this is 2018. I don't remember when the inception of Project Blitz is. I don't know if it talks about it in here, but this is like in 2018, everywhere they tried to put these bills in all over the country, and these guys track this. They're very for not having church and state combination. So they check all the bills that are in the legislature, and they try to find these trends to see what the religious right is doing. They're the ones who figured this out. So compared to the 3 "In God We Trust" bills proposed a year earlier, this was a marked increase. AU recognized the coordinated efforts similar to those made by conservative lobbying groups like the American Legislative Exchange Council and State Focus on Family affiliates that suggest model legislation to state lawmakers. So they take a bill and they share it with everyone all over the country in different states, and those people will take that same bill, that's the model of what they want, and they try to push it in their state to be passed. Okay? So working alongside Frederick Clarkson, an AU ally and veteran researcher of the religious right, AU soon discovered who was behind the "In God We Trust" bills and dozens more model bills attacking church-state separation. Far-right evangelical Christian groups, including the Congressional Prayer Caucus Foundation, Wall Builders, and the National Legal Foundation, which had banded together to launch an initiative they call Project Blitz. Project Blitz is described as an effort to push traditional Judeo-Christian religious values. Who keeps talking about Judeo-Christian religious values? Steve Bannon. This is what he tried to push at the Vatican in 2014. You have Steve Bannon in Cambridge Analytica, and you have Steve Bannon at the Vatican pushing Judeo-Christian belief system, a Judeo-Christian America at the Vatican in 2014, okay?
I think Trump's daughter's a Jew too. She married I think says she's Jewish, right?
Could
Trump's
be.
daughter and the son-in-law is Jewish. So that would be Jude, and Trump's Christian. I'm just saying I see that link there.
Yeah, which works, but so Judeo-Christian religious values, this is their spiel. This is their spiel. This is the conservative rights spiel. This is what was being pushed everywhere by the leading people at that time who had the money and the means to do it in 2014. They were the ones, the steps to bring America down were put in place. You had the Christian right coming together. You had these big guys who were big influencers with a lot of money get a tool put in place to get this ball rolling to bring in Donald Trump, which is going to be the last guy, and this is it. So this was what happened in 2014. You have the Christian right mobilize. It legit mobilized. Like, it became an entity that is now going to stick its foot in all this mess, and it's going to take a stand for what it wants, and it's going to like destroy the planet. It all came from independently of the United States and its government. It's independent of that, and it has to be, because it's a separate entity. It's the religious entity by itself who tries to come up and be in charge of the state entity. Okay, just like you had in Europe, because the beast is the state, the beast is the country. The whore riding on the beast, that's the papacy. And so those united, then you have this mess. Anyways, Judeo-Christian religious values and beliefs in the public square, and to reclaim and properly define the narrative which supports such beliefs. So Americans United takes issue with that. In an analysis prepared for religious freedom, advocates concerned about the initiative's true agenda, Americans United translates the mission statement as follows. Project Blitz is a coordinated national effort working to codify a far-right evangelical Christian America. It is part of a national trend to redefine religious liberty as a sword used to harm others instead of a shield that protects people. This is Americans United definition of what Project Blitz is. This isn't their actual mission statement, okay, of Project Blitz. This is just what they're saying is codify means to organize and to put into law. So this is the effort working to codify a far-right evangelical Christian America. So Christian America is trying to put a coordinated national effort to put into law their belief system. And it's part of a national trend to redefine religious liberty. So they're going to redefine religious liberty as what? As a sword to harm others instead of a shield that protects them. So religious liberty in the Constitution is there to protect everyone's religious freedoms, but the evangelical movement is saying that no, that's used to harm people with certain other beliefs. So it's actually a sword used to harm people. This is what Americans United are saying. Anyways, in a 160...
Oh, I'm sorry. So you mean like their religious liberty definition is they want to be given the right to use their liberty to use their religious belief against people. That's their liberty. Is that what you mean? They want to be given the liberty to, I don't know how to word it, the liberty to hurt other people because they've got the religious right to do it. Is that what you're saying?
They won't say that outright, but that is their motive.
Okay. Not the other way around, where you're given the right to worship as you see fit, whatever, even if you're an atheist.
Exactly, because to them you have people like Muslims coming into this country who they hate, and they can't have them having religious freedom.
They want to make it a Christian nation. That's
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly on point. So their point is that you're using this idea to keep church out of the government and out of state in this country that is an entirely Christian country. So you're hurting this nation with this because we are a Christian country and you're not letting us be a Christian country. right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yep. They want the liberty to be a Christian country and use that to make the laws. Yeah. Right? Did I
Yeah.
say? Yeah.
Okay, so Jonathan put it perfectly. They want Christian liberty, not religious liberty. So they want Christians to have all the liberties that they want, but not all religions to have their liberties. That is a very good way to put it. So, in a 116-page Project Blitz playbook that was distributed to over 750 state legislators, its architects lay out a game plan in which the In God We Trust bills are just the beginning, because they are likely to receive the least opposition, particularly from organized outside opponents. Despite arguments that this type of legislation is needed, measures such as the In God We Trust bill can have enormous impact, the playbook assures. Even if it does not become law, it can still provide the basis to shore up later support for other governmental entities to support religious displays. So they're trying to set a precedent for something in the legislation, and they're doing everything they can to do that. Robert, what does this mean? What's DCL? Okay, might have been typo. Anyways, where was I? They divide Project Blitz priorities and 20 model bills into three escalating categories. First, Project Blitz focuses on legislation aimed especially at young students to promote our Judeo-Christian heritage in public education. So there's that. In addition to the Sample National Model Display Act to post In God We Trust in public buildings, especially schools. This category includes sample bills encouraging the display of religious documents and Bible literacy curriculum. The playbook cites a Bible literacy law passed in Kentucky last year that an American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, investigation determined has led to widespread proselytism in public schools. So next, the Project Blitz playbook recommends that legislators expand on the America as a Christian nation myth, okay, by using proclamations for days, weeks, or years recognizing the Bible, Christian heritage, and Christmas. So this is everything that's happening around us. So there's no such suggestion for recognizing other faith traditions or their text or holidays. So it is Christian-centered. It's not any religion-centered. It's only Christian-centered. So Project Blitz supporters acknowledge that these proposals will face opposition for being divisive because they are favoring Christianity or Judaism over other religions. But since legislatures and religious freedom advocates who oppose the bills can then be branded as anti-Christian or un-American, even a defeat on a particular legislative battle can be cast as a victory. So they're saying that if we fail in one of these bills, then we can just call the people who spoke out against it anti-Christian or anti-American. And now you just like hung them on these words and you put them in a bad light, and you still get a win because now you get to call them these names. So this is very horrible, these people. Opposition to the bills does not play well among members of the general public. The Project Blitz playbook notes, even if these proposed bills resolutions do not pass, sometimes making opponents take a recorded vote against them is a victory in and of itself. For such measures, a vote is a win, regardless of whether the bill passes or is defeated. So you make these people who vote against it enemies to the entire Christian nation, and you single them out as people that they should not be like helpers of or back in the future. So slowly but surely, you're going to have them taking over the government through these means. It's a very smart way of doing things. There is a lot. This is in the notes, this article, if you guys want to read it. I'm going to get back to that, otherwise I'm not going to finish those. But you see, are you guys getting how the Sunday law thing happened in 2014? Because for me, that helped a lot.
Yeah, that helped me. Thank you.
Yeah, we really don't look at it. We have Protestants somewhere in the back of our minds, but we don't see them as big of an entity as the Papacy was in Europe. But they are the same exact thing here in the United States. They're as big as the Papacy was in Europe during that time. But because of how long we watched conservative news outlets that hid what the evangelicals were doing, and because it was only in the past 1.5 years that we actually learned about everything they've been doing in the background, we haven't had enough time for that idea to sink in our brains, I don't think. But when you realize what that entity is and what they're capable of and what they've been doing, 2014 was their coming out party, coming on the world stage of politics and putting their foot in to influence politics and take over this country. That was it. 2014 was a big, big deal. That really was a Sunday law. And it's that thinking and that motive and those people that are going to be pulling this through all the way to when the full Sunday law is completely realized and the image of the beast is completely set up.
Can you repeat what you said at the very beginning there? What happened in 2014?
The religious right had like their coming out party where they put their foot out. It wasn't visible, we couldn't see it, but they put their foot out into the like in a consolidated effort, if I can say, with a certain number of leaders, right? Robert Mercer, the church breakfast peoples, whatever they are, I don't remember, because they had Falwell, they had like bouts of this in the past, but in 2014 they got a really strong machine going, and they were able to bring in their leader into Congress, Donald Trump, using that tool, everything that they did in 2014. So 2014 was like, okay, the religious right got together, and Steve Bannon had this influence of the Christian right, because they're all spouting the same thing, Judeo-Christian America. And so he presents his beliefs at the Vatican. He tries to get help wherever he can to help this nation, because it's been building. The evangelicals have been gathering together, but in 2014, the big steps were done. They were taken. What was going to be done in 2016 was already set up in 2014. So you have Cambridge Analytica, it comes in and it begins its work. At the same time, you have like Russia in the background also stirring the pot. But that entity of Christianity made a huge, huge step forward that set this country into this situation that it's in now, and it all happened in 2014. And it made the initial step to what's going to be completely fixed and set up in the Sunday law. Do you see what I'm saying? Because we're not seeing that Christian entity. I think we still have it like Steve Bannon and Cambridge Analytica really separated, and Robert Mercer really separated from that Christian right. But it's their representatives of that entity. And that entity is just like the papacy was in Europe on that beast. So it's a big deal. It makes sense what Tess has been saying this whole time, to focus on what Steve Bannon's been doing. Eric Prince, the Blackwater mercenary Christian supremacist guy, along with his sister Betsy DeVos, all end up getting lucrative government contracts or government positions. Yeah. There's a lot there.
I want to clarify with 2014 because I'm trying to work that out. Not all the other like surrounding information, just the Sunday law. So that was a Sunday law to us because, as the priests, it was a Sunday law to us because we were supposed to recognize the union between church and state that was happening at that time. It wasn't a literal Sunday law. It was a prequel to the union of church and state, and we were supposed to recognize that. Is that why that's a Sunday law for us? These things that were happening?
Yeah, because if you had Falwell and all of those back in the day, we weren't looking at see, this is the problem. This is the problem, and this is what we're getting yelled at for by the other side, is we're looking too much at external events. If you don't, you miss it all. We missed it all. You had Falwell and moral majority in the 1990s all doing their thing, and we missed it all.
I understand all that. I'm just trying to clarify, though, for the Sunday law, because you keep going off.
Sorry.
It's okay. And so
you're right.
I'm still having a hard time understanding, like, the 2014 being our Sunday law. I had never really understood what it meant, and whatever it was that clicked the other night, I can't remember who was presenting, and it clicked, and I lost it by the end of the presentation.
Yeah, it was me. It was Sabbath.
Yeah, and it totally clicked for the first time, and because my brain just doesn't hold water very well, it's leaky. I forgot. And so whatever you're talking about there is starting to make sense again, and that's what I'm trying to understand is.
Okay, let me talk this through one. Let me give this another shot and see if I can make this.
No, it's good. It's good. I got it.
No, because I
Yeah,
want to
give
know.
it one more shot. Give it one more shot, because it hasn't clicked for me yet. Maybe I'm not alone. Maybe
I
some
took my sweater off. I'm ready to go. Let's do this. Okay.
Without all the other side information, just why is it a Sunday law for us?
It is a Sunday law because you have a separate entity of the religious body of this country coming in, trying to take control of the state. That's it.
Okay.
Because that's what happened in Europe. You have the religious entity taking control of the priestly rulers in Europe. It's not a control like, let me pull my guns out, put them at your head, and get you to do what I want.
No, I understand. So when you're saying the European version, I'm thinking in Europe, it makes more sense to me when Clovis, or I can't remember who all the characters were at that time, Justinian or whatever, who gave the supremacy to the Bishop of Rome or whatever, or gave the power to the Bishop of Rome. Wasn't that the uniting of church and state long before they were oppressing Europe?
That's why I still wonder about the Pope in Congress, because that looks like we gave religious power their control of our state.
I think you're talking about Symmachus. Symmachus was in 498, and he was the one. Yeah, we're going to read about him later on in this, because Tyler brings him up again. Because it does happen. It happens, it starts to get set up before it's actually fully set up. It starts before. The initial steps get put in place. You have the religious entity making steps to get power over the state, and they do it in a weird, like, subversive back-end kind of way, especially in the United States. And you see that. The thing is that it wasn't out in the open. Like, it's not like someone was telling you, hey, look, church is trying to take control of state. It's happening. This is the Sunday law. You had to actually look for it, and you had to pay attention. That's why we didn't see it, because we were taught for so long not to look at external events and not to pay attention. That's one. Two, the other issue we had with our Protestant understanding is not realizing that it was the Protestants that were the Babylon in this country for so long.
That's what I think it is the most, because we considered ourselves Protestants too, and we didn't really care that they're keeping Sunday as long as we kept Catholics out.
I think that's a big deal, because we thought of them as brothers because we're like all conservative.
And we thought Catholics were the enemy, but that period already came and went. We were blind to the fact that it was the Protestants that were going to repeat the same thing.
Exactly.
Supporting them, essentially.
Right. So if we would have seen what they were from the get-go, and we would have seen what they were doing, because I remember when I was back before this movement, when I heard that people in the South or somewhere on the East Coast were trying to get, prayer back in school, I thought, oh, how sweet. They care about God so much. That's so wonderful. What a fool was I. That's church and state combination. But I was completely blinded by it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we all were.
We all were. So how would you
we had that Protestant way of thinking, right? And we had to get that weeded out of us, and God had a plan to do that. And he's doing it through three different tiers of people: the priests, the Levites, and then the Nethinims. I guess we wouldn't be the third, but I had a thought. I forget what I was going to say. So the Sunday law, like, we each get our own Sunday law because we need the Sunday law in order to have the latter rain, right?
Yep.
And so the Sunday law kind of came and went for us, but the regular Sunday law, the one that we've always thought about, is going to be the one for the Nethinim, right? That lines up with the Nethinim Sunday law.
Yeah, because that's the one that becomes fully external. It's out in the open.
Yeah, so because they're the last group, so we had to have ours in order to get our latter rain, to see what just happened, in order for us to make a choice. The Levites will get the same thing, and then the Nethinims get that big Sunday law that we've always been waiting for, that still won't be a real Sunday law.
Well, it's not in the sense that we thought it. It is going to be a real church and state combination.
Church and state is a better way of saying it.
Right. And the Sunday law for the group of people is there, and only that group of people is going to see that Sunday law, because it's for them to see it and to be changed by it. So our Sunday law as the priest was 2014. That's the one that we need to see to understand what time we're living in now and to do our work. Yeah. The Levites are going to start theirs, and they're going to see that. The ones who are paying attention are going to see that in external events, or if we are the ones who have to tell them, whatever the case is going to be when that happens. And then they're going to get their latter rain and understand, and they're going to come out. But it's an internal understanding on our ends of it, because we're an internal movement still. But when it becomes external and the world can see it, that's the big Sunday law. That's the one for the Nethinims.
So we must
The
have,
Panium.
some of us recognized something to have come into the movement, even if we didn't know that that's what it was we recognized, right?
I think God was giving that information to his servants, right? So we had Jeff and we had Parminder.
Yeah, but we came in without that knowledge. So we must have seen something to have even come in and recognized something, to even have been drawn toward this movement, right?
What I know it was for me is I looked at the church and I saw really comfortable sermons being preached that weren't telling anyone to get ready. That's one. And two, I looked outside and I saw craziness in this world.
Yeah.
I saw wars and I saw floods and earthquakes. And I said, something's up. It's the end. And no one's warning anyone.
I was thinking earlier, really kind of strange, is that if it wasn't for me being a little bit loopy in the conspiracy theories, like probably a lot of us, I wouldn't have come into this movement. Because if I didn't have that line of thinking, then I would have looked at the church and said, everything's okay. I don't need to listen to all that other weird stuff that people are saying the church is, not doing what we're supposed to do and all this stuff like that. But it's because I had that mentality that was into conspiracy theories that I found this group. Well, the people who helped me into the group, they were the same thing. We were all into conspiracies, and we were watching a lot of stuff, even watching Walter Veith and all that stuff while coming into this stuff. So it's funny because the thing that we had to weed out of ourselves, this whole idea of conspiracy theories, was, I don't know, probably for a lot of us was the reason we ended up here.
Yeah, God used what he saw he could use with us to get us where he knew he could work with us.
Yep.
So to answer Allison's question, I'm pretty sure Sunday law for the Levites is Raphia, because they're only one dispensation behind. So our plowing started in 1989. Their plowing started in 9/11.
Yeah, because their latter rain starts at Raphia, right? So that's their Sunday law.
Right. So from 2014 to 2019 is their former rain, and now their latter rain is going to start, and then their harvest is going to start at Panium to Sunday law.
Yeah, you're right.
So
Okay, that's interesting and new, because I always thought it was Panium was their first Sunday law.
no, it's Raphia.
And that's what Tyler has been saying too, or Tess?
Tess, yeah. That's from her studies.
Okay. That's cool. Thank you so much. Great study. Really great study.
Yeah, we need to get this waymark hammered down, because unless we really realize what that was, and we're at the end of our test right now. So our test is to understand what that was. We need to know. And it took a lot of sifting through how many different, through two streams of different information. So we had to move from one stream to the other. And from this other stream, we're looking back through the lens of this other stream. And all along it was showing what this Christian right was doing, what this huge entity that we always thought was on our side is actually the complete Babylon opposite, the wrong side, and it's trying to take over the state. And it's consolidating nonstop. Now you have Project Blitz. It's just getting stronger and stronger. There's a massive demonic force behind it, because it's trying to get church to influence state. And that is what was set up in 2014. You had the religious right set up a method to influence state and to get control of state. That's what happened. And it was Protestants who are Babylon. It's Protestants who are the papacy. It's not our friend. They're not our friends. It's not the papacy and the Vatican. It's Protestants who are doing this, and their little leaders, Steve Bannon and Robert Mercer and these guys. So for me, Cambridge Analytica is just the tool they used. I think we're focusing so much on that one tool. We're not looking at the people who were using it. Who bought that tool? Who's using it? They're just a tool. They're for hire. They worked for whoever. It doesn't matter what kind of candidate in all over Africa and South America, wherever you want. They're just a tool for hire. You're not going to look at the gun and say, why is this gun doing this? You got to look at who's using it and why and what's going on. So who, Lana says, who's going to harvest the Levites? priests, we start sharing with Adventists on after November 9 or after Pentecost. We don't start sharing with them right away, I don't think. And this has been my question, because I'm not sure what happens in these next couple years, but we have a Jacob's time of trouble. And I don't know why. I feel like I keep hearing people say that Jacob's time of trouble is we wrestle with God to overcome. I don't know what we're wrestling to overcome with. In the actual original intent of that story, Jacob had a time of trouble because he was going to have to cross the river and go to his brother, who he knew would hate him and wants to kill him. So our situation is, we know we're going to have to cross the river and go to the Levites, our brothers back in the church. And I don't think we realize what a big responsibility that's going to be when we get there. And when we realize the implications of that, I think we're going to be quaking in our boots, and it's going to have a work of a Jacob's time of trouble. This is just what I'm thinking, because in the original application of that story, that's what was happening. So I don't know, but there is a time period that Tess put on there where after November 9, we still have things that we need to figure out. So whatever those things are, that's what we do first. And we are supposed to receive our name at this point too, I think. I don't remember, but at some point we need to have a name, whatever that is.
Also, it would be interesting to know what exactly is going to look like the message to the Levites, because how much, just imagine how there's all this knowledge that we have been accumulating. How is it possible to transfer, not to say to transfer, how is it possible to make them learn in a quick fashion so much information, or not just so much information? It's not only, they have to not only learn it, but accept, come to grips with it. So, so when I'm thinking about it, this message will be repackaged in some kind of way that will be deliverable.
I've only been here for a year. Like, this is all new to me in the past 12 months. So they have a couple of years from, 2019 to when's Panium 2021. So,
Possibly. Yeah.
Possibly, or no, we're not saying 2021.
Yeah, they haven't for a long time. I don't know. I think they just want us to focus on November 9 for right now, which I totally understand. But if it's 2021, that's fine. She says we still have training to do, and that's what the training is in the time from Raphia to Panium for the priests. And it makes sense because we're not at November 9 yet, but it's so close, and we still haven't completely gotten our methodology formalized. For us to be able to use it properly, it has to be completely formalized, and that's what Parminder has been trying to do nonstop. If you've noticed, what he's been saying in those Romania videos is we need to get this message formalized and packaged in the way that it's usable so that we can all use it, because we need to know the correct way that we're applying and interpreting the Bible. If we're going to go to them and start teaching them, we need to know what we're teaching them is right. And to do that, we need to know how to interpret things correctly. So right now, that's the big deal. That's the big push, is for us to get our message formalized. Finish formalizing. Tess, as part of it, is pretty well organized, but the methodology aspect of it and the rules of how to use it, that's really abstract to us, and it's really hard to get a grasp of, as I know for myself and for others it is. But if we just keep whacking away at it slowly but surely, you start to pick up a thing here and a thing there, and you start to try to use it, and you're fumbling around like a little baby trying to learn how to walk. But eventually we're gonna figure it out, and we're gonna get good at it. And when we do that, we're gonna be reading and interpreting the Bible correctly on our own. And that's why they're training us right now, giving us the tools that we need, so that when the ground force goes to fight the battle, they have the tools they need and the training they need to do it. And we're going to be just directly teaching them.
One of the things that opposition is saying, even opposition before what happened last week or the week before, or whatever, opposition has been saying more and more about Parminder, and now they're saying about Tess, is that there's just no Bible. And I've even thought of it myself, that we're not using the Bible all that much. But
you can't if you don't know how.
Hang on. That's the point I'm making, is like,
sorry.
It makes perfect sense that, like, that we're going to have all the opportunity to open that Bible and show people exactly what it means if we learn how to read it. But we'd be no different than every other Protestant on the earth if we just kept reading the Bible the same way that we always were. We'd never get anywhere. So we're being taught how to read this book here at the end of time, this book that has been accumulated over 2 testaments and then Spirit of Prophecy, and we're going to finally know how to read it and then show the people, and it's going to be like this magnificent light that they're going to see. It's just going to click everything. So,
Yeah, it's going to be big. It's like if you're about to use some heavy, very dangerous machinery that has a big impact, they're not going to let you put your hands on it right away. They're going to take you into a separate little room and show you some training videos before you go messing around with that machine. You can't, so we have to learn how to use it properly before we start whacking away at it and throwing it at people. Yeah, after Pentecost. So after, right. When is Pentecost is like that increase of knowledge way mark after Raphia?
Period between the cross, right? And then the period between the cross and Pentecost, and the cross is Raphia. So there's that little period of time that no one seems to know what it's about. But I think it's for us to, for Christ to kind of come back and expound the scriptures to us, just like the road to Emmaus kind of thing, and the upper room.
Wow. Wow. You guys, if we stick it out, we're in for a most incredible experience with the scriptures.
Amen.
We have so much to look forward to. You cannot let anything take you off the path now.
That's right.
Oh man, that just, whew. Why am I here? How is this happening? Okay. We just gotta stick it through this, and I don't know I don't know where it ends, Lana. I don't know that there isn't like a specific date for that one, I don't think.
Yeah, but I just saw the 2021 date as being Panium on the Germany presentation from Tess. So
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if this is something that has been, how did they come to this, how did they come to this date, like 2021, so.
I don't actually remember that, and I've been wondering that, and I can't find a video where that's being talked about again.
Wasn't it when they did the 7,
the 3.5?
I was thinking, remember they had them pull down those studies? They were doing the General Conference President and the Presidents. Wasn't it that? When I remember Tabo teaching us that and showing us 2021.
But it came before that, I think. I think he was using a number that they were using at that time, and I'm not 100% sure. I thought it came from Theodore. I thought it was one of those math things that came up. But then they started saying, because we realized that we're not supposed to be even thinking about that time afterward. I don't think they're not saying it's, I don't think they're saying it's not 2021. I think they're just saying we're supposed to focus on Raphia. We don't need to worry about any of this stuff afterwards because it's irrelevant right now.
Yeah, our test is big enough right now.
And the light hasn't been received, right? Because we know that the test is November 9th, but that's also the unsealing of the next package of information. So we have nothing to go on right now. We're only guessing.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not going to get light until we get through this dispensation on that point. So there's not even any point to even think about it that much.
I think that's why they shifted on it.
Yeah.
They realized that because I think it's when they realized dispensations and that they were all repeating like that we can't actually say when that time is going to be right now.
Yeah. Do you guys have any more questions on this 2014 thing before I move on? I hope that helped, because it helped me a lot to, if you look back at how the Catholic Church there's a link here also, but when you look at it, it wasn't like a full-blown control like I was thinking, where, there's a pope in every castle and all of this. It was mostly through the influence of the people and through just different pressures that they put on the states to enact the things that they wanted. For me personally, it wasn't like what I had thought that rulership was like, because they had ups and downs where the Catholic Church wasn't doing that great, and then it was doing all right again, and then backing up and down. But it's not it matches a lot more. Like now that I look at the Protestants and what they're doing in this country, it matches a lot more with what I can see here the Catholics doing in Europe at that time. But this 2014 was a phenomenal step that they took in acquiring influence in this country, in putting church in charge of state. In a little, it was the little step before the big step, if I can say it that way. But it was the step, and it was the step we should have seen if we ever would have realized who the Protestants were. And Ellen White had it right there in great controversy. It's been there since the day she wrote it down, that while the papacy has been decreasing in power, the Protestants have been increasing in power, and they will be the ones to bring in the Sunday law. It was right there. How many times did every single one of us read that? And I don't know. It wasn't time yet, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, I'm going to go on here. So what did we say that they need? The religious power and the civil power. What is the civil power? Who are we talking about? Situation looking at the copy of the beast. So what are they saying? Okay, so we're talking about the image of the beast. Okay, so what do they need? They need religious power and civil power. So what's the civil power? Because in the image of the beast, you have the church and the state. So we're going to look at the civil power. It's the muscle. It is the power the force that forces everyone to do what the church wants them to do. The church by themselves has no power. It can't do anything. It has to use the civil power to keep Sunday or to persecute or whatever the thing may be. Who is the muscle here in the 1260? It's the 7 kings of Europe. And who is the muscle here in the 7th kingdom? It's the 10 kings of Revelation 17. So who is in charge of the 10 kings? The United States. The United States is in charge of the 10 kings. It's the United States that becomes the muscle for the religious power here in this history. And the first step to that, again, was 2014. So what we wanted to identify is that it is the end of the Republic and the beginning of the time of the Empire at this point. This marks the end of these things here. And this is the things: freedom of religion, civil freedom, sovereignty of the people, and rights of the people. All those things now are gone. If you want to know what makes the Constitution good, then you have to look at the problem that it solves. You have to juxtapose them. That is what we did. So what history did we look at to see the problem that was solved? We looked at the 1260. It was the papacy and the beast. He got kind of confused here between those two, whichever one. So it was the papacy / beast that created the problem. I'm not sure which you would say. I think it was the papacy, right? They're the ones who try to take control of the beast. I'm just going to do that.
So, to question on the freedom of religion, civil freedom, sovereignty of the people, rights of the people, then it says all those things now are gone. Are all those things considered gone already?
At the Sunday law.
Oh, not, you mean they are then? They were.
No. When the 10 kings, when the 10 kings of Revelation 17.
Okay, still future.
Yeah.
I'm really struggling. I'm sorry if I'm messing anybody up with my questions. I'm just really struggling. Thank you.
You're fine. And the way to think about it is this. Does a revolution happen in a moment, or is it like a long period of time of people getting angrier and angrier and angrier, taking little steps here and there to change people's minds and to change the idea of a nation, and then finally bring down the dictator, right?
Yeah, that.
It's a process.
Yep.
It's the same kind of process when you have a revolution that wants to bring in a dictator.
Yeah.
So it's a process. And the beginning of that was like, you can think of it in 2014. There were different attempts at it throughout history, and in the 1990s with Falwell and moral majority and all that. We saw that, in that time, and Paul Weyrich also, they decided, because the religious right never voted. They never got involved with the voting. And all of a sudden, these two guys said, hey, we are like a lot of people in this country. We should vote. We could totally influence this country to make it do what we want and have religious laws like we want. We should have been voting. And so they start to get their feet wet. And then they start to bring in different rulers. So you had different exercises for them to come together and to bring in religious, things. But it fell apart, and you had Obama come in, which completely destroyed all of their work, and it angered them so much that 2014 to them, enough is enough. We're doing this. We're getting everyone mobilized. These two guys went and found a weapon, and bam, we're doing it. And they did it. They have brought in the end of days. Here we are. So the dictator isn't complete yet. And you know this because at the Sunday law, we say that's a Sunday law, and you have a dictator. You have Donald Trump and Putin. Everyone is basically what that is in 2014 is the stage is set. The stage has been set and the game begins. And so once Trump comes into power, and now you see him wanting to be a dictator, but he can't completely be a dictator yet. There's still people in his way. It's a slow process. So you had how many people he keeps firing. Now John Bolton quits, and he's even less restrained. And you're going to see more people quit that are restraining him. You're going to see him fire more people that are restraining him. You're going to see people on the Democratic side fall away that are restraining him slowly but surely. And then it's going to be complete at the Sunday law. There's not going to be a single person left standing holding him back. So it's a process. And he is completely intertwined with this Sunday law, Mr. Trump over there. Because he is the muscle. He's the muscle for the religious right. They tell him what they want. He does what they want. And that's why Tess was trying to bring out that situation that happened when Trump wanted to shut down Congress because he wanted money for the wall. But then Fox News said, hey, you're going to not do that because our listeners here, they need to have money and a job and da-da-da. And then Trump completely backfired on that one. So it is the religious right that controls the state. They control Trump. They are his vehicle. They're his, his muscle. I mean, he is their muscle. So everything is just coming together in my brain over this thing. So it's just like really scary how accurate it all is. Did that answer your question, Susan?
Yeah, it gets clearer each time you expound more and more.
That's what I had with this 2014. I didn't understand it at first, and I didn't know what Tess was talking about. You got to keep looking at it. And I'm sure if you Google Steve Bannon's religious agenda, you could probably find some really good stuff to help.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to end up doing that too because I'm curious. But I know what Tess had said is that in 2014, he was pushing this religious agenda. He was in the Vatican trying to push it, but they wouldn't have any of it because they hate Trump. So it's been just the Protestants. But that's another interesting point because we say that the Protestants are going to go to the papacy to get help from her. It didn't work in 2014, but they tried to. The daughters tried to go back to the mother. It's going to happen again at the big Sunday law. But like the Third Diadochi War with Seleucus, it shows that Seleucus isn't going to come back until the big Sunday law. But that's just getting really confusing. I'm not getting into that right now.
You know the dream that Ellen White had where she looked out the window and she saw like her brethren were coming to the house, and they say this. Yeah, does that have to do with this kind of too, where the church, because they become Catholic?
I'm not going to try to misapply that.
You know which dream I'm talking about, though, right?
Yeah. They went out the back and they saw the clergyman bring in the pitchforks and everyone. With
Yeah.
Kind of, there probably weren't pitchforks. I'm adding that in there, but I don't know where to apply that at this point, honestly. I don't know. I haven't looked at it in a really long time, so I don't know where it would fit.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I wish it did. I'm sure we all want to know when they're coming for us. But I'm sure it won't be too long. Anyways, so where was I? I'll just read this again. All those things are now gone, these things. If you want to know what makes the Constitution good, then you have to look at the problems that it solves. You have to juxtapose them. That's what we did. So what history did we look at to see the problem that was solved? We look at the 1260. It was the papacy that created the problem. We traced the history of the papacy at the beginning of the 1260. We used the agricultural model there when we looked at the papacy. So what we did, we say the history from 508 to 538, what is this history? If we look at the field, what is happening to the field here? it is being plowed, and it is being prepared. And prepared for what? It's being prepared for a work that the field needs to do. What work does the field need to do? It needs to grow the plant. The field isn't ready yet. It has to be prepared. This is a time period of preparation from 508 to 538. And what work does the papacy need to do? What is their job function? They need to persecute. He wants them to persecute people. I don't remember what let me read that. Oh no, we don't need this. Never a moment good anywhere. Just apostate. See this right now. Okay, we're just gonna delete that. Because I don't think I explained my point of that. That's just confusing. So just never you mind that nonsense. So the history of the beast in 538 to 1798, that's a 1260, the field needs to be prepared. The situation needs to be prepared to get them to this point. So what gets them here in 538? It is the beginning of the captivity of God's people and the beginning of what for Babylon? They're going to rule supremely. There is no competition for them. So what is the U.S. doing from 1798 to Sunday law? It is ruling supremely. So no one is standing in its way. People are trying in both histories to challenge them, but no one is able to take them down. See, this is the thing, though. If the United States speaks like a dragon, and it's like a dragon power, when it speaks like a dragon, that doesn't happen until the big Sunday law. So the Sixth Kingdom, the whole time period of the Sixth Kingdom, it doesn't necessarily speak like a dragon, because the Supreme Court laws that are passed according to the Constitution are almost always on the right side of the issue. So that's still kind of confusing for me when I think in terms of Revelation 18 and then Revelation 17. I don't know. I think I'm just getting confused in my head. But you can see here that this time period, 538 to 1798, is the supremacy of the beast. And 1798 to Sunday law is the supremacy of the United States. This means the history before that point is the preparatory. That doesn't seem right. No idea. Is that how you spell it? Okay. It's the preparatory period, and we said that that's 508 to 538. And we have, is it this one? No, this one. Okay. So we see this here. Papal supremacy, U.S. supremacy, ruling supremely. We have 538, 1798. And then we have 508 to 538. This is the plowing of the field here. And here, this area is the fallow ground. Okay. What does this say? So now what happens? If you can remember 10 years before 508, in 498, what are the characteristics of this Pope? He is the first one to be called the vicegerent of God. He is the first one to be called the judge of God. He is also the first one to start excommunicating what in the world? Oh, wow. Emperors? Uriah Smith talks about this. His name was Symmachus. So this is that guy, Symmachus. This is Symmachus. What was he before? He was a pagan. So he is a pagan converted to a Catholic. No, that's fine. To Catholicism, which is important to the idea of conversion from paganism to Catholicism, because you had paganism being taken down and you had Catholicism being placed up. So you had, at the start of that, you had a pope that was pagan, and the pagan part was taken away, and the Catholicism came in that pope. So that was an interesting point I hadn't thought of that he pointed out. So what's standing in the way of the United States here in 1776 in terms of its growth? What does the United States need to do? And it needs to be the American Republic. So what's stopping it from being a republic? Britain is. So what begins here? They remove themselves from Britain. What is happening here in 508? What is removed that is standing in the way of the papacy? It's paganism. So in every case, something gets removed that is standing in the way. So here you had Britain, oh no, it was this one. Okay, so here you had Britain being removed in the Declaration of Independence, and here you had paganism being taken away in the in the daily being taken away. So the thing that is always standing in the way is always the thing that was standing here beforehand. If we made a long history and brought it back, this is the history of pagan Rome. Pagan Rome is going to get removed here, and now papal Rome is going to get raised up. Great Britain being a symbol of the European powers was ruling, and now it's going to get taken out of the way. But the United States is cutting the tie. Now the United States has the ability to rise. What are the principles of the papacy? How would we know what those principles are? Without saying anything specific, how would you know what the principles of the papacy are? Using parables and our board work. All you have to do is contrast them with the American principles. So you have our principles of freedom of religion. They believe in only one religion, so not freedom of religion. They don't believe in civil freedom. They believe in state or state freedom. So I didn't understand how he negated these. It didn't quite make sense, but sovereignty of the people, instead you have sovereignty of the rulers. Rights of the people, you have rights of the rulers instead of the people. So it's opposite of these things. So those principles come in when Symmachus comes in and starts using his rights. The idea of church and state coming together really come in here in 498. This is when those principles are being seen. Church and state combo with religion on top. When did these ideas get formalized of the papacy? In 533 in Justinian's decree. He codifies them and puts those principles into law. Declaration of Independence is the ideas, and Constitution puts it into law. Remember, because it's just ideas. Like we had our understanding of this movement, different ideas, but now we're getting it, like we're codifying it. We're making a spiritual law out of it, basically. So it's like if you can make a handbook that says how you study the Bible. You had that same situation happen with William Miller and his rules of Bible interpretation. He was using those principles at first, but eventually he had to formalize the principles he was using, and he turned it into his 14 rules.
Sort of like Stephen Haskell had a Bible handbook.
I don't know who he is.
Stephen Haskell, yeah.
Yeah, we read that in was that Tiffany's devotional, morning devotion. It's very good.
Who's Stephen Haskell?
He's one of the pioneers.
Oh.
He wanted to marry Ellen White when his wife died, but she turned him down. But I'm trying to think of what else to tell you. He did Sabbath school was one of his things too.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. That's good to know. But yeah, so you probably had multiple dispensations of that happening in that time as well. And Uriah Smith was using William Miller's rules of Bible interpretation too. So you see how it's being used, and it had to be organized for people to be able to use it accurately. Thanks, John. So when did these ideas get formalized of the papacy? In 533 in Justinian's decree, he codifies them. So who is the master of the papacy in this history of 1260? Satan is. He is the one where the message comes from. This message arrives for them, and they will accept it. In terms of what Satan's agenda is that a perfect message? It's a masterpiece of deception, as Ellen White says it. It is perfect, and it gets codified. He has no complaints about it. Using the understanding of it is the message of the freedom that arrives here. What in the world? Are they perfect? Yes. That means Constitution in 1789 is a perfect message. We look at that idea of perfection in the Constitution. That is difficult for some people. Some say that there is slavery in the Constitution. This is the idea we have to pull on. It leads us to the history of slavery in the United States. So what he is trying to explain here is you have the Constitution and it's perfect, and you start trying to poke at it and see if it's really perfect, and then the thing that you run into that's the issue at that time is slavery. And that's the issue, that people are saying, no, it's not perfect because look at slavery and how it's in there. And you have to tug at that and see that, no, it's actually not in there. So We started reading about it and saw that slavery is not explicitly in the Constitution, and it was left out in such a way as to allow a correct reading of the Constitution to show that slavery is wrong. We said that there is a problem here, though. The problem is the states. The Constitution allows the states to figure out their own business. If you have anything against the Constitution, it should be that it allowed states to have slavery. So that is an interesting point that Tyler never touches on, but Sister Tess does. And we're trying to look at the North as states that are good, but what Sister Tess points out, that Sister Ellen White points out, well, Elder Tess and Sister White point out, is that the North were also judged by God because they allowed slavery to go on for as long as it did. They should never have allowed it to be a state issue. That was not okay. Slavery should have been completely cut out and wiped out of this country at day one. So when they allowed it to keep going on, and for the sake of keeping this country together, decided to just leave it up to the states, that was an issue, and that did not sit well with God, and that was not okay. So just wanted to insert that in there because from her learning her things. So then okay. Then we learned that we have two states, two kinds of states. They will either use the Constitution to say there is slavery or that there isn't. So then we saw that the idea of property in man is not in the Constitution. We looked at Abraham Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, and Charles Sumner. They all show there is no property in man in the Constitution. So you have good states and bad states arguing about this until 1861, where there is a point of separation. What we saw was that this perfect document was being used to uphold these two opposite agendas. We overlaid our line on top of this, and we saw similarities. You have time of the end and increase of knowledge and formalization, then later on a point of separation. So how did we make Raffia a point of separation? We have the agricultural model, which shows us the wheat and the tares are separated. So there's a harvest there. We said that the government of the United States illustrates the same dynamic as our line. So you have a message that comes down at the time of the end, then that message gets formalized into the Constitution. What does the Time of the End magazine produce for us? It produces a movement. I don't think it is an accident that in 1996, Future for America comes into being and gets its name. Even the ministry gets formalized at that point. So what did the Constitution create? It created a nation. This movement and this nation get established. 9/11 establishes us as a movement, and 1798 establishes this country. We're going to have a name. I keep wondering about this, and someone's going to have to name us. I don't remember how this works or how the application works, but eventually somewhere along here we need to get a name. So I don't know. Anyways, what happens now? No.
I wonder if the Seventh-day Adventist Church will name us.
I wonder if FFA is going to name us.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
The Seventh-day Adventist Church doesn't snuff their nose at us anymore. We're out of their business. We left. They have nothing to deal with us. Until we go back to them, there's nothing they need to deal with us with. The only enemy we have right now is the one you see.
When did the Christians when did the early Christians start getting their name?
The Millerites?
No, the early Christians, like Christ line.
They got their name at, what was it?
1863, wasn't it?
No. In Christ's time.
Oh.
It was at
Right? Antioch.
Antioch, yeah, that's the one. They got their name at Antioch.
Antioch. So
I don't remember the circumstances that were involved.
I don't think we'll be called Pippingerites at this point. Maybe Parmenderinos or something. I don't know.
Oh gosh.
I don't know. I wonder if they're gonna, because we're so political, if they're gonna give us like a political name. Is what I was wondering today.
It would be an insult because Millerite was meant to be an insult. Christian was meant to be an insult.
Yeah. It's gonna try to be an insult, but
It'll stick.
I thought about Lambert Fellowship too, Lana Lambert, because Tessa's name was Lambert, and so was the fellowship, and then so was Kathy Pippinger's maiden name. I wondered about that too, Lambert.
Lambertarians?
I don't know.
I don't know, but the thing is that pointing out what that video that Parminder that I saw like the first 1/3 of it, and then I jumped to the end because I wanted to see what everyone was talking about, okay? But Parminder was saying that they couldn't crucify Jesus on religious grounds, so they called him a king, which is a political power, not a priest. They called him a king so that it would threaten the political powers and make them put him on the cross for sedition, right? So I'm wondering if they're going to call us something political. I don't know what that would be.
I don't know if they'll call us something political, but it'll still be sedition, won't it? I mean, the threat against us is not going to be, the church has no power without the state. So it's going to be some way that we're threatening the state. And if you look at the prophetic message, doesn't that kind of sound threatening to the state?
Oh yeah. Did you see what the definition of sedition is?
Yeah.
I sent it to you. That was like, let me see.
I knew, because we used to talk about sedition when I first came into the movement. They were talking about sedition, that they thought that Jeff was going to get arrested because Ted Wilson was going to go to the state. I remember that being a conversation when I came in. And now, obviously, things are probably going to be a little bit different.
I thought I sent it.
They were talking about sedition then, and so I knew what it was because of that. I don't know.
I wanted to read it because it matches exactly what our lines are saying. So let me just Google it real quick. Conduct or speech inciting people to rebel against the authority of a state or monarch. What do our lines tell us about Mr. Trump? That we're supposed to be against him. So our entire political aspect of our message sounds very seditious. So
well, it is. It always has been. Even for the Millerites, I think it was the same thing.
Yeah.
And what happened to Christ? It's the exact same thing.
So, from Lana, to him who overcomes, to him I will give some of the hidden manna, and I will give him a white stone and a new name written on the stone, which no one knows but he who receives it. Amen.
That's in heaven, though, right? That's what?
Yeah.
22. 21? Yeah.
I don't know. God arranges everything, though, so he'll give us the name that we're supposed to have through whatever means on here. I just still feel like I'm awkward because I don't know what to tell my family. Or anyone who asks me, "What are you? What do you believe in?" I'm like, good question.
I know. I've been struggling with that too.
Yeah, same here. Like,
what are we?
Yeah,
I still say I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. Do you?
Yeah.
Because we are the same way that
they're Protestants.
Apostles were still Jews, right? Like, and yeah, even in the Millerite time, they considered themselves Protestants. They were true Protestants.
Yeah.
It's like we're the true.
But Jews. Aren't we Protestants too? Because we're protesting against this regime, right?
We're everything. We're Israelites, we're Jews, we're Christians, we're Protestants, we're Adventists.
Yeah. True.
It's just that every single waymark, the movement had to separate and become something a little bit even more specific. But we still fall under the umbrella of the whole thing. And John had what was that diagram with the little lines?
Yeah, that's good. Because
yeah, I've got that. Yeah.
We're almost done with this. Let me get through this and then we can have some more discussion if you guys want, because this is interesting topics here. So what happens now? What does the parable of the agricultural model tell us? Two groups, wheat and tares. The wheat and the tares are growing together. We know they are opposites and we know they're going to fight each other. We have the good states being the wheat and the bad states being the tares. What made a good state a good state and a bad state? It was slavery, the issue of slavery. So based upon slavery, we saw one was good and one was bad. We see here in our line that it is a prophetic doctrinal issue that's going on. So that's for us. So based off of doctrine or the prophetic issues, we have good, wheat and tares. So based off of our methodology or our message, we have people who believe it and people who are against it or who think it says something completely different than what it actually says. And the states had that issue with the Constitution and the issue of slavery. So notice that you have a belief, you have like agreed upon piece or document that expresses who you are, and then you have an issue that seems to challenge that document or that understanding that's been organized, right? So we have in our time, we had all these beliefs that everyone agreed upon, our methodology, everyone agreed with Parmenter and everything. But then you came to an issue like equality that completely broke everything down, and everyone said, no, our methodology says it's this, and everyone says, no, our methodology says it's that on the issue, on the one issue of equality. It's exactly what we're seeing right now in our movement, right? So the state represents an individual, and we know there is a battle going on inside the individual. The moment you decide if you're pro or anti-slavery, you take a position, and then eventually it comes to a separation. And here we are. What's interesting is the idea of the harvest. Who is bundled first in the harvest? Who leaves in the history of the United States? The Confederacy leaves. They leave, and the United States is trying to get them to stop, but they just walk away. It is interesting because it was the same dynamic in the time of Christ. Christ didn't walk away from Judas. Judas got up and walked away. It was always the tare that walks away. John 6:6, everyone is standing there. There are good disciples and there are bad disciples. Christ is standing there and says, you have to eat my flesh and drink my blood. It sounds crazy. The good disciples say, amen, we will do this. Doesn't matter how crazy it sounds. They're going to do it. They have an experience with Christ. They know what he says is right. So no matter how crazy it is, they're going to do it, right? Same thing we're doing right now. The others say, you are a cannibal, and they take it literally and they leave. They refuse to search out the deeper meaning of it, and they just leave. So they hear the same message and come to different conclusions. Then the ones that read incorrectly, they stand up and they leave and they never come back. That is the same dynamic here. Same with Judas and same with the states. They get up and they leave. It is always that the tare is going to walk away.
Wow, isn't that what happened at this Germany?
Yeah.
Yeah, huh. They walked away. Wow.
Yep. It still blows my mind that I'm listening to Tyler say this before and back in time before he even realized what would happen.
So those are Tyler's words?
That's I didn't write this. Yeah. Well, the only notes you saw of mine were the ones in blue that I deleted.
Wow.
Yep. Prophetic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, we saw the issue of slavery. We are in, so it gets really, it's kind of fast because he's in summary mode. So we're in summary mode. We're not going to go through everything. But we saw the issues there. We saw that within the individual, there is the pro-slavery and anti-slavery. What do we call these two things? Two rivers, two streams. I feel so bad for whoever has to use these without. Anyways, we see these being identified in 1996 in the history of the United States as pro-slavery and anti-slavery. So think logically. If you say you only want half slavery, does that make sense? No, so you have to pick a side. If you say you want a little slavery, then you do want the whole slavery. You can't say you just want a little bit. Trampling on human rights is trampling on human rights. It's not, you can't have a little bit of freedom and a little bit of not freedom. That's not even logical. I don't even know where it was. Halves. Okay, so no. You cannot be in the middle. This is the problem with Judas. He listened with both streams. So why is he in both streams? He thought he could handle it. He thought he could control Jesus at that point. He sees the two paths before him, but he says to Christ that he can navigate between the two effectively enough to force him to be king. Judas was too smart for his good at some level. He was trying to manipulate the situation. In doing so, he tried to be a state that said he's for slavery but also against it. It doesn't work. And so he walks away and betrays Christ and then kills himself. He lays out the dangers of being in both streams. I wanted to end with this point. We mentioned several issues. What were the issues that the Constitution was correct on and falls on them in the correct way? You have slavery in 1865, suffrage in 1920, religious problems in 1950. That was the Eisenhower. There's a nice history there we didn't get to talk about. The civil rights in the 1960s, gay rights 2015. All these histories, the Constitution ends up on the right side. But what I want us to see is that we are living in the year 2019. I want us to notice a couple things. Slavery is in 1865. If slavery was dealt with in 1865, then why do we have a civil rights problem in 1960? It never went away. What happened in 1865? What was made illegal? Slavery. What is that? Slavery, anti-slavery is a law. Slavery laws can't force the heart. The issue of racism in the issue of slavery never went away. Did the South give up slavery because they wanted to give up slavery? No. They were forced to stop doing slavery. And what happened? They just became underground racists. They couldn't legally persecute you in terms of putting you on a plantation like they did before, but they still looked at you the same way. They still thought of them as inferior. Nothing changed in their hearts. All that changed was a law. So now we come to the Civil Rights Act. The problem from slavery to the Civil Rights Movement was that there were all these racist laws in place. You have this problem from 1865 all the way to the 1960s. That is 100 years. For 100 years, there is racism and discrimination. And now it turns into the projects and the ghettos. So slavery never left. What happens with the Civil Rights Act? Another law. It says you racist people stop discriminating in your jobs. So you have to stop segregation. The South fights it tooth and nail. That battle did not give up easily. So they were then forced, and the racism went underground again. The heart just goes underground. So we come down here to our time, and we know that racism is still there. It never left the heart. Now the discussion is about reparations. Why are we talking about reparations here in 2019? The reason we're talking about reparation here is because what never got given here in 1865, reparations. They were promised reparations, but they never got them. This was supposed to be the 40 acres and a mule. That was the slogan at that time. It never got given. We are trying to fix a problem that we made more than 100 years ago. How does a group of the United States feel about reparations? We're not going to give reparations to nobody. They refuse to acknowledge responsibility. It is the same heart that is in all these periods of time. We are dealing with the exact same problem that we were dealing with in 1787. What happened in 1787? The Constitutional Convention. They're standing there arguing about slavery. The United States and people in the world have never gotten over slavery. The conception of the United States to the present, to 2019, the heart of slavery is present, all the way from the first day to now. What is that? It's racism. So what are we saying are the three main issues we have to deal with? Race, gender, and conspiracy theories. I just want to focus on these two for a second. Who is the symbol of race? Obama. Who is the symbol of gender? Clinton. And we know we have Trump. He's our conspiracy guy. I just want to focus on race and gender for a minute. Racism from 1789 all the way to 2019 has never been dealt with in the sense that the heart has never been dealt with. It always pops its head out whenever it can. What is the Civil Rights Act and reparation? It's like whack-a-mole. That's what all of these laws are. We hit one mole and another pops up, so we keep having to deal with it. Women, 1789. How are women in the Constitution? They're not there, depending on how you read it. How did the founders feel about women? They didn't think they had rights. Same thing in 1920s. You have suffrage, and they whack-a-mole it. Did the United States give that one away easily? No, there was a pretty much a civil war with that one too. Same thing with Roe versus Wade. Do women have the right to control their own bodies? Does a woman have an autonomy over herself? Here in Roe versus Wade says she does. Women become an issue. This is in 1973. 2019, we are at the same place and we are arguing over abortion. It's the same thing. Someone also brought in wage equality. So you can go to other examples too, but I just want to show you this. My point is that the heart of gender and race have never been dealt with. They continue to be a problem. Now we're at a point where God is telling us that we have not changed our hearts. He is saying to us today that it is not a U.S. that has the problem with these issues, but the movement. He is saying that the 144,000 have an issue with gender and race. It has now been brought to us, and we are the problem now. The issue now lies on us. We are the issue. We need to look at ourselves and see how am I discriminating with gender and race? God is saying that we have a lot more problems than whether or not you believe in the 2520. No one here in this room would say they are racist. You may not be by the top level definition of racism, but race and gender are so much more than the ideas of man or woman or in black and white. This is tribalism. How do you feel about your tribe versus someone else's tribe? So that was a very good point. And he said this before pants became an issue. It was when everyone was still, oh yes, equality, gender and race. Of course, we see it and everyone was accepting it. It was that strange, quiet lull right before the storm hit. The moment the implications of what equality meant hit, all of a sudden, people who had agreed with this idea that we need to stop being sexist and we need to stop being racist came in, all of a sudden, everything broke loose. And for a pair of trousers, the whole movement was split, just like two pant legs. So that's where it all ended. Well, it's not ended yet, but this was a good point he made here at the end. So.
I think they knew about pants at this time, though. Like as the leadership, they knew where they were going with everything.
I think Tess did. I don't think Tyler did, because he tried to bring that in the last presentation, and he ended up not like saying that there's an issue, a definitional issue, and he left it.
But they were working together on his study with tying it in with hers. Like they were comparing notes and stuff. So he knew stuff. He had mentioned before that he was in I think it was one of these presentations where he was revealing something that she was going to be revealing that same week. It was out of her study, and he said it before she did, but it was her notes. She just let him do it. So he was reading.
That was an issue of Acts 27, and she had already done it in Brazil, so he knew about it. But I thought that Tess and Tyler said that they never actually planned any of it together. They said that, I think.
I don't know.
Tyler said that for sure, though. I don't think they coordinated, because the first time he ever made a mention that now the dress issue is coming out is after he had already known about the France ones when he was over at Portola with us. That's the only time.
It wasn't his message. It was hers that she was bringing out.
Okay. I don't know that he knew, but
yeah.
That's fine. If he did, it's okay. Anyways, it all.
So remember how the church is a woman, and we used to talk about how you can't have a woman over a woman. That's why we don't have women elders or women being ordained, because prophetically it would be a church over a church, so you'd have a gay marriage. How do we understand that now?
Now we're fine with gay marriage.
But so, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm still struggling with all this.
Well, be careful when you say that, because people are going to.
I know. I'm not being serious. Sorry.
Someone's going to run with that.
Oh, man.
Cause the next shaking right away. Like.
Well, things to come. It's okay. The people who are here are fine. It's been.
I don't understand the logic of that, though, Susan. What did they used to say that because the?
Okay, so a woman in Bible prophecy is, a church in Bible prophecy is a woman.
Yeah.
And so, if you have a woman being ordained as a pastor over a church, you have a gay marriage, because you've turned it upside down. You have a woman proceeding over a woman,
It
right?
seems like such a stretch though, because you're taking a prophetic symbol, and I don't know if they still believe that or whatever, but you're taking a prophetic symbol and then applying it in a real situation, and it just seems really kind of like a stretch to me. I don't know, like.
Well, I learned it in this movement.
Yeah, who used to say that? I mean, maybe they still say that. I
Do
just
you
don't.
remember it, Adriana?
I do, but that was before all of this with our methodology getting clear on how we are making application.
But I guess somewhere I've still got some clearing up to do, because I just don't understand how we transition that, how we explain that. I don't understand how we explain that if a church is a woman and it's okay
that
to.
explanation actually makes less sense to me than having a woman ordained as an elder. Like when you see the study on, when you see how they came about ordaining women, like most people were calling it before it even happened, because it was the natural next step following that logic. But that explanation that I guess you're saying they used to say, that I just don't even see the logic in that personally. It's strange. I'd like to hear that study.
I guess I'm strange. I
Well, I'm not
thought I
saying you're
understood
strange. I'm
it.
not saying you're
No,
strange. You
I
didn't come up with it.
feel like it's right, you know, and it's like I'm still struggling with trying to understand how to undo that thinking.
It's, you know, we're looking at a restoration of all things, right? And the whole when a woman became subjected to man, that was in the Garden of Eden, right? It was a curse.
Yes.
It was a curse. So there's no way that God's going to allow that curse that came as a result of sin to carry on into heaven. And if we have to get rid of all of our sin here and now before we go to heaven, then the curse has to be gone as well. And we have to be used to it, because we now have prejudice built up around that curse, and that has to be weaned out before we go to heaven as well.
Yes.
And before we go to the world. So it has to happen now. There's no other way around it. That has to happen now in order for all things to be, for us to be purified, I guess, from those prejudices that came as a result of a curse.
Susan, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How do you think the Jews felt when it was only men who were able to get circumcised and go into covenant with Christ, but then Christ started to baptize and he baptized men and women? All of a sudden, women could be in covenant with the religion as well.
And so what do you mean? How do the Jews hated it? Is that what you're saying?
They thought that he was crazy because women are supposed to be less.
And it was more centered around the Gentiles. Like it was their perspective of Gentiles, and now he was bringing them into the gospel.
Yeah, that too. So he brought women in covenant, and he brought the Gentiles into it too. He turned everything upside down from what it was in the Old Testament. You realize that, right? At his first coming?
Yeah, and I believe in equality and all that. I'm just trying to understand the methodology, I guess, of how
Line upon line.
yeah, and I guess I just still don't, I'm missing some things.
That's all right. It comes, because it was the same thing for me, and there's still a lot of things that I'm trying to understand. But this is what I find is really making sense. And these videos that came out from Romania are really helping with the methodology, I find.
Yeah.
The more you start understanding the methodology, you don't need, Parmenter's not giving anyone the answer. He's never given anyone the answer. He never tells you this is what you need to think. He's telling us how to think rather than telling us what to think. So if he gives us the way of thinking, then we can apply that to everything. And we carry that through with principle. That like Adriana's saying, like Christ came, everything that he did was in opposition to what they were legally allowed to do from the scriptures. Like the woman who committed adultery, and those men had a legal right and a legal obligation to stone her to death. And Christ came in and said, let him who is without sin cast the first stone. He turned the whole thing around on them. They had a legal right, and they were obligated by the Old Testament to do it. And all of a sudden, Christ came and changed things around because there was a principle that they didn't get. It's like the sacrifices. The sacrifices could only go on so long because eventually the Jews just took advantage of them. They missed the whole principle of the sacrifice, that it was intended to stop sin. You're not supposed to want to kill an innocent animal every single day. But they got so used to it, so the principle disappeared, and they were just carrying on with the formality.
Mm-hmm.
So Christ had to come and say, you guys missed out on the principle here. So now we're going to get rid of that, and I'm going to bring that principle back in a new form. And the principle carries on all the way through, but the word seems to change. So thus saith the Lord, like, you know, that you have to stone homosexuals. Well, why are we not stoning homosexuals today? We have a thus saith the Lord to tell us to do that.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? So we have to look at what was the principle, because obviously the thus saith the Lord applied in the wrong dispensation is not right. And we've been accepting that for a long time, all the way from the cross.
Do you know what time we live in right now, Susan?
What do you mean what time we live in?
Because in the Old Testament, you had the old, like, Israel wandering around in the wilderness. You had church in charge of state. State was just to keep everyone organized, but God was in charge of his people. But the moment you take it into the 1260, now it's wrong. They were using biblical principles to say this ruler was brought up by God, so everyone has to follow what this ruler says. But at that point, it was considered incorrect. And then you have in the United States the principle of no, church doesn't even get to be a part of this anymore. So depending on the history you're in and how people are manipulating God's words to put people in subjugation to them, God has to change things up to keep equality and safety for his people. So people try to to use the scriptures and the things he says in a way that they put people down, and he constantly keeps having to change things to protect people from others doing that to them. So when people of the world start to manipulate the scriptures and use what it says there to destroy other people's lives, God has to change what the physical words say, but the principles of it behind it are the same throughout. You understand?
Wow, you're blowing my mind. No, you're really smart, Adriana.
I'm not nothing.
Yeah, you are.
No, I'm a lazy and I like to sleep a lot, and that's not at all. Whatever this is, it's not for me.
Well,
we gotta look at the true source of it. I mean, we're only getting light. We're in our latter rain right now.
Yeah.
Like Elaine says, you know, we have to be a little more careful about complimenting each other, because that puts someone in danger. And I've seen it. I've seen it over and over again.
I apologize. It blows me away how well you can expound it. And
Susan, you don't know how many times
still
you've blown my mind with some of the things you've said. And it's none of us. It's these like snippets of time where I think the Holy Spirit just like a torrential downpour on your brain, and then all this stuff gets lined up and it's God helping you. And then your job is to share what God just helped you understand.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, yeah, we're very privileged and lucky to be here and blessed to be here. And God willing, we keep staying in here as long as we have to be, you know, all the way through to the end. So
when you say the Romania videos have helped you, is that the Vistasi, or I can't say it? Those.
It just came out.
Yeah, they're just coming out, right? Yeah.
Viatorul astăzi.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
That's cute though.
May I ask you, what does it mean?
The future today.
Oh, okay.
So like future is now.
Future is now, yeah. Yep.
Which, speaking of which, their website is still down, eh? I guess it's always going to be down. It's not theirs. It still has that cult site.
Yeah, and Future for America has a new one up.
What, like a new
and
one?
I can't remember how I found that out. I don't remember what I was typing in to try and find something, and I hit it because my computer remembers. You know how when you've typed things in, you don't have to type the whole word in. You can just hit enter because your computer already has it in its history. And it came up, but I can't remember what I typed in. And it's a whole new website now.
Futureforamerica.com, futureforamerica.org, and the FFA wiki are all up right now.
Wiki. Also, I was in there yesterday and I watched a study from Lambert Church, a Parminder one, when he was there June 2018. So they haven't taken all of Parminder's down from the Lambert Fellowship, by the way.
The Lambert one, they didn't take anything down.
Yeah, I noticed that too. None of them are down.
They don't own that site though. That's someone who's still in the movement who has control of that.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought since Jeff owned Lambert that site was theirs.
Yeah, no, he doesn't
Who
own
owns
it.
that site?
There's
Do you know who owns it?
Well, no one owns it. It's whoever opened it, which must have been a younger person who's still in the movement. So they control that website. That's got nothing to do with the church, right? Like they could keep it up all they want, even if they don't have that building anymore.
I didn't know that. Okay, cool.
It's like in the process of building something. Like I don't have any access to Lane's stuff and she doesn't have any access to mine, but we're both running different aspects of something. Because not one person can't do everything. It's way too much.
What do you? I'm not sure.
So I have the SAC Fellowship website and there's a YouTube channel. I have that email. And there's something else I'm forgetting. Oh, the Facebook pages and the WhatsApp. Right?
Yeah, it would have been just that a young person probably started the YouTube channel for Lambert years ago. And that young person, it could be like Brittany or someone like that who lives down there.
Yeah.
And they're still in the movement, so they still have control. They didn't go and delete their own videos, obviously. So.
Yeah. Well, that's fortuitous that was a thing.
It was School of the Prophets and FFA YouTube that they pulled all the videos down. But they have every copy, so they're not lost. The movement still has every video.
And that's total censorship too, you know?
Yeah, and you know that, I mean, it's the thing is, and this is what some of Parmenter's videos are talking about. It's just like, you know, we have so much to focus on before November 9th, and Satan really wants us to be fighting with people, right? Like, we don't need to waste our time with that. We have a lot to learn and very short amount of time to do it, and we've got a lot more people to pray for now too. And so whatever is going on, I think it can be a total distraction. And I mean, everyone's got to do what they want, what their conscience tells them to do with their time. But man, I'm still trying to figure out this message, you know, and it's like, it's starting to pick up. It's getting there, but then there's those days where you just feel like you don't know anything at all.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
Like if you asked me, what was the thing I was thinking? Oh, that girl who asked on WhatsApp, how did we come to November 9th? And I'm like, blank. No idea. I don't remember. I don't even know if I ever knew.
I showed you that diagram on Sabbath. What do you mean? It was 3 days ago or 2 days
What
ago.
diagram?
Yeah.
I'm not kidding you. I have the worst memory. This has happened 2014 when I was going through my whole conversion. I went through this whole period, right? I'm not going to get into it, obviously, but it was I went through a really, really hard time. And I lost my memory with everything. And I came out of a relationship, and then I had this girl who was helping me through a lot of this. She was a friend of mine. And I told her, I said, I don't know what's going on, but my memory is not working anymore. Like it was like night and day when I went through that. And so we had these conversations, like huge conversations. She was kind of counseling me. And the very next day I'd be like, I don't know what we talked about yesterday. I don't have a clue. And ever since then, my memory has been like that. Like I don't know what happened in that time, but my memory just disappeared. It's that bad. So I'm just praying that the Holy Spirit brings all the stuff that I'm putting in there back to recollection, because I can't dig that stuff up. I don't know where it is.
Oh.
I shouldn't say I can't, because obviously some things come out and things start coming out. Which
I've heard you remember plenty of things.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
I can't dig them up when I like. It's
not when you want to, only when it's not that necessary.
Yeah. Like, because there's this Timothy Fitch guy, the guy from Africa. He was texting me again today, and I was giving him a bunch of stuff.
What was he would not? Oh, I was losing it. I'll talk to you.
No. He's got no data, so he's teaching, right? He's teaching down there a group of people, and they can't get onto the videos, and half the videos are pulled down now anyway. And he's looking for this information. And I recognize that today. I'm like, man, like I can't give you all these answers. But then I realized, if God blesses you with something, if you have money, if God blessed you with money, is it all for you, or do you share it? And I was just like, I was hearing that in my voice today. I was like, God blessed me so that I can bless my brothers. And so whatever charts and things I had in emails and stuff like that, they're all there at my hand. I can use them to my benefit, but here's someone else who needs them. And I was thinking to myself, like, oh man, I can't do all this for you. It's like, you're wasting my time. I got to do stuff. And I would realize how selfish I was being in my own head. So I just started digging stuff up, and I gave them everything I could.
I did that too with all the notes that I had on Tessa's information, where everything that I took down for Arkansas that I presented, there was like a huge stack of stuff and pictures and images and charts that I sent him, and I'm probably going to go back and get more because I have everyone's. No, because it's been, no, I don't know. See, I don't know if we have it for him, but I have everyone's notes saved up, so I can just email him everything. We have, because I save everything in a folder. I have everything anyone ever presented.
How do you organize it? Do you just put it all in one folder and then just?
Let me show you, because I like my little system.
I don't have a system, and that's why I don't pull any of those things out of email. I just say, well, if I ever need to look for it, I'll put an email, but I'll never look for it.
Let me, where is it? Here. Okay, so you see this? This is a SAC fellowship folder. I go in here, and here's Parmenter Test Tyler. Then I have, this is for devotionals and prayer meetings. That's where all those folder go. These are the monthly meetings like September and Rescue, and these are the Bible studies. These are other things.
So when you go,
I go in here, I have the days. I go on Mondays. I have the year, because years are going to change. I go in here. I have the months. I go in September, and I have the date, and I have here, and I have everything for here.
Yeah, never mind.
This is the other Monday for Lana. This is, I think, Tony's presentation, or I don't remember when it was, but yeah.
It's a brother from Africa that was messaging a couple of us on WhatsApp. I think his name is Timothy Fitch or something like that. But he's just looking for studies and stuff like that, because they're trying to study over there and they don't have data, so they can't watch all the videos. Like, we were just linking him the video. Like, he's asking a question. It's like, oh, just go to Arkansas and watch it yourself. And they don't have the ability. They don't have the data there. So we have to give them physical transcriptions or charts or whatever, so that they can actually use them. It's less data to get that stuff.
Parallels.
Yeah, they like.
I was just, yeah, they do, and all the transcribed stuff I put into a PDF, and I send them to their like WhatsApp, because I got a lot of those guys on WhatsApp too, like just friend on friend type of thing.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, same thing. PDFs and just picture files. That's all they need. They don't want to edit anything. They'll just study it what it is with those guys.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to see I'd like to go over there and actually see how these guys are studying, because they're like, they don't have everything that we have.
Did you not see Manjeet posted on that Bible study group the that video of all the East Africa groups, that little summary? It had pictures in their little.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah, they're in the classrooms with the chalkboard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes not even that, just like a stack of papers.
Yeah.
Sometimes no chairs even.
Yeah, I remember seeing pictures of people that had just like paper nailed to a tree, and they were just like had their drawings on that. They didn't even have a room to go to.
I was talking to a couple of them, and they were like, "Lady, you don't know how nice you have it where you are. We just want the world to end. Our life is so horrible here." It hurt to hear that. Someone from over there was telling me about how difficult it is for them to just on a daily basis to just survive there, and he's like, "You don't know how nice and easy you have it over there. Here, we just want the world to end because we're sick of this."
Yeah.
So all they do is study this to figure out how soon it's going to end.
But it's all we want too now, right? Because all these things that seem so luxurious about this part of the world, we don't really participate in any of that. We're spending all our time doing the same thing they're doing now.
Yeah,
Studying
pretty much.
An end.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Anyways, I kept you guys 3 hours. Sorry.
Huh?
It was terrific. Thank you.
I had to count on my fingers, right? Because it's the memory thing.
Anyways, continue to hang in there and make smart choices with talks and things you watch and what you do. And yeah, we're so connected. I feel like saying goodbye is no point because I'm probably going to chat with you guys in not too long anyways. So we're constantly
If not here, what's up?
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah. See you guys on WhatsApp.
Yeah. Okay, let's go.
Somebody want to pray?
What's that?
Somebody want to pray?
Yes. Okay, I'll pray. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you so much for this meeting. We thank you for everything that we were able to learn tonight. Lord, continue to help us to understand these things and to keep them in our heads and in our memories, and help us all that are struggling, because we all have issues with our memories, and there's so much information, Lord. There's so much information, and it just keeps building and stacking, and we're all struggling with it. Please help us, Lord. You understand how every individual's mind works. You know how best to help us. Continue to give us strength in understanding parables and these tools and this methodology. Help us to understand how to formalize it and put it in our minds in a way that we can use it well, so we can do the work that you have prepared for us to do. Guide us through this shaking that's going on. There's still more that's going to come, and we know that, but we ask that you help us to be able to focus on the external events that you've been showing us also, because I know you want us to track that. You've given us this information and this light so that we can look outside and see what's happening around us and be able to put it on a line. And we thank you for that, and we ask that you help us to be able to do that correctly. Help us and guide us, and help everyone who's getting ready to prepare studies. The Germany meetings we're about to start, Lord, on Wednesday. Please help us to get great light from those meetings and for those presentations. Help us to really understand who we are, what our movement is, why we're here, and what we stand for. Help us, Lord, to be ready to go and to do what needs to be done when the time comes. Continue to help us to grow in wisdom and understanding. Continue to pour your Holy Spirit out upon us to convict us of doing the right things and to give us the understanding that we need. And please pour out your grace also, so that we can be the wise virgins and have our lamps full. We thank you, Lord, so much for everything. And we pray all these things in the Lord Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Real quick, did you guys see Putin told Saudi Arabia that they can buy his defense system?
Hey, I posted that, wasn't it? That article I posted.
Yeah, that was.
It almost seemed like mockingly, like he's trolling Trump, but at the same time, I think they both have a relationship with Saudi Arabia, but America has a better relationship because they got more money.
Yeah, we'll see now.
Or more power, I guess, is what it was.
Yeah. So that one's got to go on the line. Anyways.
That's a good eye for catching that. Good on you.
That your raffia, the raffia thing that you're building, right?
Yeah, it's for raffia. But did you see what Aaron was saying earlier?
About?
I ended up talking to him about it. Parminder has a video where he pointed out it as Iran being the Islam we should be focusing on, and not like Sunni and Shiite Muslims, but Iran, the country. And he had some kind of connection with that. And Aaron's been following Iran since about 2009, trying to figure out where that fits, because they're thinking that next year that's going to be the issue with Islam that we have.
Who is Aaron? Because I went to his YouTube and all his videos are not from this movement. I don't know if you ever look up Aaron. Like, who is? I kept hearing his name before, Aaron Sen, and I'm like, who is this guy? I keep hearing about him. Like,
it's the guy. I think he's the one who's in 2012 when
let me see if you're getting the right.
said was about the Sunday law, and Aaron stood up and said, "Behold, the bridegroom cometh." So I think that's the guy.
So God had.
Aronson did some really good presentations on methodology and parable teaching, and they're posted on the Romanian station too.
I don't think this is the Aaron Sen you're looking for.
No, that's not Aronson.
No, I know. I think that's the one that John got. This is the Aaron Sen you're looking for.
Yeah, I know that's the guy, and there's an Aaron Sen who has his own YouTube channel, and he comments on all of the present truth. Yeah, that one at the top. You're saying that's not him?
That guy right there is Aaron Sen, yes.
No, the top one where it says Aaron Sen and it just has a picture of the
I don't know.
So you go to his videos, because this guy has been commenting on present truth videos,
This guy? Huh.
Yeah, and he's got all this Ron Wyatt stuff. So, like, remember the guy who thinks he found the Ark and all this stuff?
Yeah, I saw that too. Yep.
Is that the same Aronson? I don't know.
Well, he's commenting on all the Present Truth videos, though, so I thought...
That's not the Aronson that we're watching.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, because I was like, who is this guy? Like, he has all this Ron Wyatt stuff, and that's all, like, conspiracy, in my mind, anyway.
Yeah. No, that's not the right Aronson there. But the Aronson that's on the Romanian channel,
So he robbed his name, maybe. So,
Conspiracy theory.
oh, sorry.
It's okay, I'm just listening now.
Let me get evidence first.
Documenting the discoveries of the late Ron.
Before we have our BC camp meeting next month, Tabo's going to be coming here, and I know he's probably going to want to talk to us about a little bit about what's going on and stuff like that. But he's also going to be presenting. I kind of want to, whatever you have compiled for Rafi at that time, I'd like to bring that just, if I could. I just want to print it off or whatever, so that maybe it's a topic that can be brought up or whatever. Because I'm wondering if, I was just thinking, like, if the camp meeting is going to be all about what's going on in the movement, and Parmenter's telling us, it seems like we're not supposed to really focus on this right now because we've got 2 months. I was just thinking it'd be a good thing to have, because I'd like to share it with people, like they can have an idea what sort of things are happening.
Yeah, just remind me closer too, because we're probably going to add stuff. Or you have that document is online. You can print it off and add to it if you want. It's
okay, yeah, it's on there. Keep forgetting about that.